All right, shalom, shalom.
Shalom.
Well,
All praises. So yeah, got another one today. Continuing where we left off. Unity, the strength of a people. Today is part four. Oneness in the household. Still doing that. Now, last week we did. We looked at the fathers, and today we're gonna look at the mothers. All right. So prayerfully, we'll get some perspective that we haven't seen before, or some review of stuff we have seen. Right. Typical disclaimer: the scriptures expressed in this study are those of the author and not my own. Viewer discretion is advised. Right. So Hebrews 4:11. Let us therefore do our utmost to enter into that rest, lest anyone fall after the same example of disobedience. For the word of Elohim is living and working and sharper than any two-edged sword, cutting through even to the dividing of being and spirit, and of joints and of marrow, and able to judge the thoughts and intentions of the heart. And there is no creature hidden from his sight, but all are naked and laid bare before the eyes of him with whom is our account. Right. So just say all that to say that, you know, nobody nobody is spared that stands in the way of the sword, right? If you stand in front of it and it cuts you, all praises.
Yeah.
That's what it's made to do. It's made to, you know, build us up, right? So it's supposed to cut us sometime. Otherwise, we just continue in our own ways.
Yeah, for sure.
So, so yeah, in the last lesson, we looked at unity and how the goal of the Torah is to bring unity between those that have been joined to the Father's covenant. So we saw an overview of how unity works, but today we will look more specifically at how this works within the individual. Last week we saw that unity, well, not necessarily last week. This was actually a couple weeks ago, and we just been continuing on it. But unity represents oneness, and we will see today how we will have to work towards oneness within self to achieve oneness as a community or as a nation of people. Right. So
Let's go.
these lessons are not directed at any one person or group, but are intended to be edifying and useful to all who have joined themselves to the covenant of Yahuwah. The Father is impartial and none can avoid him, even the person who is tasked with presenting the lesson, which is myself. So we are all held to this standard, and none of us are above his ways or corrections and reproofs. Right. So Romans 2:1. Therefore, O man, you are without excuse, everyone who judges. For in which you judge another, you condemn yourself, since you who judge practice the same wrongs. And we know that the judgment of Elohim is according to truth against those who practice such wrongs. And do you think, oh man, who judge those practicing such wrongs and doing the same, that you shall escape the judgment of Elohim? Right. So bottom line of it is the Father is impartial. You stand in front of it and you'll end up getting your wig split, right? So when we talk about the community, we understand that it starts at home. Each household then comes together and makes a community, right? So when we look at each household, we see that the members of each household have to have a level of oneness within themselves to Elohim in order for the whole house collectively to move as one unit. So we'll see that the Father designed for this to start with the man, then this oneness must be shared between the man and the woman. These two become one, and then the children, the product of their union, are raised up in a united household, right? You saw this slide last week. Unity, just a quick reminder, is a state of being joined together or in agreement, right? It's a state of being one or oneness, a whole or totality as combining all its parts into one, right? So we've been over this several times and we're going to keep going over it as long as we on this particular topic. That unity literally is when you have a lot of different moving parts, but all of those moving parts are considered one unit. They all move as one, right? So while they all might not necessarily be doing the same thing, they all move in the same goal in the same mind, right? All right, so saw these last week as well. Today we're going to be talking about the family from a Hebraic perspective. So we will look at the various moving parts of the functional family. So it's my hope that we will be able to take what we learn in this lesson with us to move forward and build a strong set apart family. It's my belief that we can understand Yahuwah through the Hebrew family structure. All right. So first and foremost, we must identify Yahuwah's order for the family. In every Hebrew family, there is a hierarchical system. This does not necessarily mean that each person's value is less or more, but it does mean that each one has a different function as different members of the household. So as we understand the way that the physical household operates, it's my hope that we will start to understand how Yahuwah's spiritual household operates. And what we will find is that these two run parallel with one another in principle. We want to mirror our earthly households blueprint as closely as possible. So in today's society, we are faced with the cultural acceptance to rebel against this design. As it is evident today, this brings chaos, disorder, and dysfunction to the household, right? Then we had our illustration that we saw last week of just too many cooks in the kitchen, right? And this happens when too many or when members of a team or group of employees from different departments are having difficulty working on a project together, right? So you may also hear someone use this expression to describe a team that has too many people contributing conflicting ideas to a project, right? So, in layman's terms, everybody can't be doing the same thing at the same time, right? It's a lot of harmony that has to take place if the dish is gonna get cooked properly, right? Uh, it's like they say, you got to know when to hold and when to fold, right? This isn't one role is better than the next role. It really is all working right when everybody is doing their role, right? That's really what we getting at. So the Hebrew household consisted of several parts that make up one body called the family. Just as it is with the body, each member of the family is equally important but serves a different function for the body. For instance, the hands and the ears perform two completely different tasks, but together bring order to the body, creating wholeness, right? So we got the father or the husband, which we looked at last week. We got the mother and the wife, which we looked at, which we're going to look at this week. Then we got children, which are the sons slash brothers, daughters slash sisters, right? So, all right, yeah. Without further ado, we're gonna dig in. So, last week we looked at men and fathers in the house and how they can function in the household to maintain unity in it, right? So today we will look at the women and we will see how mothers can contribute to the house. So hopefully this lesson will serve as edification and encouragement. It will not at all be exhaustive or comprehensive, but we will highlight some things to help show the mother's contribution to the home, right? So we'll first start looking at Genesis chapter 2, starting at verse 21 with the first woman, the first mother, right? So it says, so Yahuwah Elohim caused a deep sleep to fall on the man, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh in its place. And the rib which Yahuwah Elohim had taken from the man, he made into a woman, and he brought her to the man. And the man said, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This one is called woman because she was taken out of man. For this cause, a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. And they were both naked, the man and his wife, yet they were not ashamed, right? So just something to consider when we think about what it is to be a woman, right? How she was created in the first place, right? Jumping down to Genesis 3 and 20 says, and the man called his wife's name Kawarkua because she became the mother of all living, right? So when we look at her name, literally it's life giver, right? The first woman, Eve, as they say, as they'll transliterate it or translate it, right? We get that from H2331, Chava, which is properly to live, by implication, intensively to declare or to show, right? So just some things to consider, right? As we continue, here's something to consider. Could it be that this could also be a part of the mother today, right? Could she have something to do with preserving life in the house? And that's just, again, we're going to dig into it, but that's just something to keep in mind is notice that there are certain things that are at play when we look at the design of the man and of the woman, and why we deal with certain things the way that we deal with them, why we move the way that we move, and then how we can bring these two sides together to interact with one another, because they both are going to come together to, like he says, they cleave unto one another, become one flesh, and then they're fruitful, they multiply, and then it's going to continue. So just again, things to keep in mind, right? So when we look at the word for mother, pictographically, we can gain a deeper insight on the function of the mother and her importance to the household. So the first symbol, looking up here at the upper right hand corner, that's the word for mother. Uh, when we look at the first symbol, when reading from the right to the left, we see the olive. It's a picture of the ox's head, right? So we should be familiar because that was the first letter of the word for father, Ab, that we looked at last week, right? And it represents strength, right? The second letter, the mem, is a picture of waves of water, representing a body of water, and also chaos, right? So when we look at the word for mother, we see that it can represent. Actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's look at the definition, right? Um, H517, aim, as they would say, and it is a primitive word, a mother, as the bond of the family, right? In a wide sense, both literally and figuratively, like H1, which was Ab, Dam, mother, parting, right? So parting. And then when they say dam or dom, it's like where we get the root word for damsel or madam, right? So Brown Drivers Briggs definition: it's a mother of humans. It can be used in a figurative sense, as in the relationship that Deborah had to the people, right? She wasn't all of their physical mother, but figuratively, she was a mother to the people, right? Of animals. And then this is interesting. It can be a point of departure or division, right? Part of speech is a noun feminine, right? So when we look at the word for mother, we see that it can represent both joining together and dividing. As we continue, we will see how this works, and hopefully it will help us understand this part of the household's function a little bit better, right? So it may be said that the woman is the point where children depart into this life, right? This is also a passage of water, if you will, when the child is born, when the water breaks, right? So again, just things to keep in mind. We're gonna see that the father really did design all of this, and he behind it all. And if we could just get on his wavelength and understand his design, man, like we gonna be in a good place, right? So the Hebrew language is a verbal language where many abstract concepts are expressed through their interactions with their physical environment, right? So in layman's terms, it's just saying that they understood abstract things, right, through concrete things. And that's how they would explain it. So most nouns are going to come from a verb, whereas when we look at Western philosophy, is in the Greco-Roman side of things, right, is more so dealing with the abstract. And then from the abstract, they come into the concrete or into the physical. But that's not the way that the father set it up, and that's not the way that uh that's not the way that the Hebrew language operates, right? It's the other way around. You're gonna learn the things that you can't see by the things that you can see, right? So it was understood that, I'm sorry, I'm skipping a line. So I'm gonna just start over from the top. The Hebrew language is a verbal language where many abstract concepts are expressed through their interactions with their physical environment. So with this being said, we will start to see how the mother and her role in the household was understood from an ancient perspective. So it was understood that a mother could represent a point of division abstractly, right? And this is found in Ezekiel 21, verse 21. It says, "For the sovereign of Babylon shall stand at the parting of the way, at the fork of the two ways, to practice divination. He shall make the arrows. He shall ask, or he shall shake the arrows. He shall ask the household idols. He shall look at the liver. Right. So literally, that word for parting is the same word for mother. Right. Aim. Right. The aleph and the mem. Right. So the word used for parting is the same word for mother here. From an ancient perspective, and even in a modern perspective to a degree, strong waters, i.e., look at our picture here. The olive is a picture of ox head, which is strength. The mem is a picture of waves of water, which is waters. These strong waters, right, um, would separate one land from another. So it is for this reason that large bodies of water and rivers alike often mark the boundaries for territories and regions. For instance, the Ohio River is the natural boundary that divides Ohio from Kentucky, right? When you cross that river, that's how you know you just transition from one territory into another territory, right? This is how they say that the slaves knew when they would wade in the water or wade across the Ohio River. If they can make it past the Ohio River and get past that boundary, they knew they were up north and they weren't technically under the Confederacy anymore, right? So again, just keep these things in mind. These are quote unquote like Mason-Dixon lines that are that naturally served as boundaries to divide one land from another land. In the same way, the Jordan River served as the natural point that divided the wilderness from the promised land, right? So we see that in Deuteronomy 11:29. And it shall be when Yahuwah your Elohim has brought you into the land which you go to possess, that you shall put the blessing on Mount Gerizim and the curse on Mount Ebal. Are they not beyond the Jordan toward the setting sun? The land of the Canaanites who dwell in the desert plain opposite Gilgal, beside the terebinth trees of Moreh. For you are passing over the Jordan to go in to possess the land which Yahuwah your Elohim is giving you, and you shall possess it and dwell in it, and shall guard to do all the laws and right rulings which I am setting before you today. Right. So, furthermore, strong waters marked the dividing point between Israel and other lands all around. Right. So it's not just the Jordan, but you're gonna see that these waters, these strong waters, were the dividing points between Israel and all of the lands around, right? We see that in Exodus 23:1, and I shall set your border from the Sea of Reeds, right? So strong waters, to the Sea of the Philistines, right? Speaking of the Mediterranean, and from the wilderness to the river, and they say that was speaking of like the Euphrates. For I shall give the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and you shall drive them out before you, right? And then you can also get a little bit more in depth of these boundaries looking at Numbers chapter 34, but we won't go there today for the sake of time. All right. And then we see even in the first temple period, in the days of Solomon, we see uh 1 Kings 4:21. And Solomon reigned over all the kingdoms from the river unto the land of the Philistines into the border of Egypt. They brought presents and served Solomon all the days of his life, right? So these waters again they can symbolize a parting of ways or division, right? And then hopefully y'all paying attention to the little picture, the illustration of these uh strong waters dividing these two banks, right? And I'll just say imagine trying to cross that for now, right? Just imagine trying to cross that. Like you can't. I'm just you can't. You ain't gonna swim across it. I'm gonna just put it like that. So as we continue to look at the function of the woman, we will see that it probably goes more in depth than we imagine, right? In one sense, we see the connection between a woman and the division between lands. The thing is that this strong water is supposed to be a boundary for the people within its borders, right? So from a practical sense, keep in mind that the women and children will remain within these borders during war times, and the men would leave to defend them. On top of that, the waters would serve in many cases as natural bounds of defense in warfare, which is why in medieval times kings would often use a moat for additional defense to their fortress, right? So just something to keep in mind when we just from a practical standpoint looking at these waters, right? For anybody that doesn't know what a moat is, down in the bottom left hand corner of the screen, you see a fortress or a castle. And in medieval times, they used to practice using, they would surround the stronghold with a body of water, right? Because this is an additional level of defense that you can't just cross like that, right? So a moat here is a deep, wide ditch surrounding the castle, fort, or town, typically filled with water and intended as a defense against attack, right? So again, we just looking at the word in Hebrew, pictographic Hebrew for a mother, right? Strong waters. All right, so yeah, I'm gonna have to apologize for how small some of these lettering is on some of these slides, but I had to get it all on this one slide. Um, but at any rate, so yeah, it says now we will take a look at the other aspect of how they looked at the word for mother, right? So in this sense, we will see how the mother was understood as the bond of the household. She has the ability to hold things together, as we will see in a moment, right? So before we continue, I want us to ponder how these functions can be used uh, to either build the household or destroy it, right? So with this being said, we will later see that women will also need to operate in a level of wisdom in order to positively contribute to the household, right? So just like we saw with the father last week, how you can get it right or you can get it wrong, right? If you get it right, then you're gonna build the house. If you get it wrong, you're gonna tear down the house, right? And we gonna see that it works the same way with the Ishas with the women, right? So again, I'm gonna look at the Strongs. It's there in the blue, H517. A mother as the bond of the family, and we're gonna see where they get this from. The mother is the bond of the family. In a wide sense, both literally and figuratively, like H1, damn a mother or parting, right? So we looked at the parting part and how these waters, physically, these strong waters are a parting or a division, right? But now we're gonna look at how they are can serve as bonding, right? So it says here, glue, right? The pictograph represents strength. The mem is water or any other liquid. Combined, these pictographs mean strong liquid. Glue was made by placing the hides and other animal parts of slaughtered animals in a pot of boiling water. Huh. So literally, we see an animal, a picture of the ox, and a picture of water, and these two together can. This is how you make glue, right? And the mother is quote unquote the binding agent or the glue that holds the household together. Hmm. That Hebrew, I'm telling you. So it says, as the hide is boiled, a thick, sticky substance formed at the surface is formed at the surface of the water. This substance was removed and used as a binding agent. Hmm. English arm with the addition of the R sound. And by the way, we're reading from Jeff Benner's the AHLB or the Ancient Hebrew Lexicon of the Bible, right? So next, he has here the arm that holds things together, right? So you can see how over time languages move from one meaning to another, and you don't even know where these things come from or where they originate or the concrete of where it comes from, and then you see, oh, wow, Hebrew is explaining it, right? So the arm that holds things together, the arm is seen as glue that encircles and holds together. A cubit was the length of the arm from the elbow to fingertip. The mother of the family is the one who binds the family together by holding in her arms and by the work of her arms. Interesting. Mother, one whose arms hold the family together through her work and love. Also, one who fulfills the role of a mother. And that's H517, like we've been looking at. A cubit, a linear standard of measure equal to the length of the forearm. Bondwoman, one who is bound to another. Again, we're seeing binding, right? Cubit, measure, post, handmaid, maid servant, maid, bondwoman, bondsmaids, right? And those are Strong's 517, 20, and 21. A craftsman, an architect or artisan who uses the cubit for measuring, right? And this is an aman, right? Uh, H527. To bind or binding together, they have that. He has that as an ohm. Uh, and then we have, uh, we'll jump down to the bottom here where it says if, right? Which is a desire to bind two ideas together, and we'll look at that a little bit more later on because that's something in the language, right? But it's the word for if, not, or, when, whether, doubtless, while, neither, saving, right? And that's H517. So we're gonna break it down a little bit, right? So in this sense, we see the pictograph come to life in another way, right? Here we see that the mother is likened to glue. Glue was made by boiling animal skins, such as oxen, in water and used as a bonding agent, right? So, as the picture below, you'll see that's a picture of what they call hide glue, right? And if I'm not mistaken, if they don't do it because they have so many synthetic ways of making glue that they might not necessarily do it today. But if I'm not mistaken, they still make glue the same way. This is still one of the same active ingredients in glue today, where you'll see it'll say like collagen or something like that. And this is literally how they make it. So hide glue is made from animal hide, animal skin, and is often used in woodworking. Wood glue. It may be supplied as granules, flakes, or flat sheets, which have an indefinite shelf life and if kept dry. It is dissolved in water, heated, and applied warm, typically around 60 degrees Celsius or 140 degrees Fahrenheit, right? So literally an animal boiled in water, an ox boiled in water, and you can make some glue. And this is the same word for mother. Real interesting, right? The oldest glue discovered, right? This is from an article from May 1998, right? But very interesting. So we'll jump down, and actually they have a picture of these skulls up here, just so we know what we're looking at. It's an 8,000-year-old decorated skull from Nahal Hamar Cave, and it's in or at this time, at the time of the article, it was in the Israel Museum, right? And what they found was that these skulls had all over them this glue, right? So the oldest glue in the world, carbon dated to 8,310 to 8,110 years before present. Obviously, when we're dealing with carbon dating, take it as a grain of salt. But it says it has been found in Nahal Hamar Cave, located on the cliff near the Dead Sea, just northwest of Mount Sodom in Israel, right? So this was found in Israel. When we're talking about glue in the Hebrew language, and the oldest glue that was found in Israel. So excavated in 1983 by Ofer Bar Yosef of Harvard University and David Alon of the Israel Antiquities Authority. The cave yielded objects for daily use, such as rope baskets, embroidered fabrics, nets, wooden arrowheads, and bone and flint utensils. and ritual objects, including stone masks and decorated human skulls. Many of the artifacts were covered with what was thought to be asphalt from deposits nearby. Analysis conducted by Ari Neisenbaum of the Weizmann Institute of Science in Rehovot, Israel, and J. Conan of Elf Aquitaine in Pau, France, however, showed the substance to be collagen, a fibrous protein found in skin, sinews, and cartilage. In addition to the artifact associated material, small pieces of free collagen were found. The study also suggested that the collagen was derived from animal skins, right? So, in other words, they covered these things with this glue or this collagen, if you will, and that helped in preserving it. The glue was used as a protective, waterproof lining on rope baskets, containers, and embroidered fabrics, and was used to hold together utensils. It was also used to make a crisscross design on human skulls. Collagen normally converts quickly into gelatin, but due to the region's extremely dry climate, the Nahal Hamar specimens were well preserved. A collagen based adhesive was used by the Egyptians about 4,000 years ago as a binder in painting and possibly in the construction of wooden furniture. The Israeli glue is more than twice as old and shows remarkable technology for a group of people who had not yet begun to produce pottery. So they say, anyways. Native Americans used a similar substance in the production of bows 1,500 years ago. It is not known how the collagen adhesive found in Israel was produced, but Egyptians made their glue by heating and treating skins with an alkaline solution. The Nahal Hamar collagen was supplemented with plant tissue, probably to give it the desired texture. Not much is known about the Neolithic people who concocted the glue. They may have been using the collagen on objects for outdoor ceremonies, as is done among some nomadic Middle Eastern groups today. Right. So, something just to keep in mind when we're thinking about the mother and the function of the mother and how they understood it. Right. Role of the mother is to hold things down. Right. Hold things together. Right. All praises. So, it was from this concept, something that holds things together, that other words were derived. For instance, we have the Hebrew word for cubit, right? It is said that this is because of the arms or the or the im with an added r sound are used by mothers in their embrace. Again, we see the concept of bonding or binding or bonding together, translating to other forms of the word, right? Then here we have the cubit. For anybody that was curious, that's a representation of the cubit, the man there. And it was a measurement that was primarily used in ancient times. And then it's H520 Amma, which is from H517, or the word from mother. It says properly a mother, that is a unit of measure, or the forearm below the elbow, that is a cubit, also a door base, as a bond of the entrance. Cubit, right? By exchange for H3967, a measure or a post, right? And then a cubit, an ancient measure of length approximately equal to the length of a forearm. It was typically about 18 inches or 44 centimeters, though there was a long cubit of about 21 inches or 52 centimeters, right? So this same concept of joining or holding together two things can be seen in the language itself, where these two letters are used to make the conjunction that pulls together two lines of thought, right? So basically, we see H518 coming into play, which is the word for right? Which is the word that is an interrogative, right? Whether uh, or conditional if, although, right? These are conjunction words that bind two trains of thought together, right? I would do this, however, blah, 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 right? So It says, uh, oh, that, when, hence, right? We get it, right? Either, I'm not going to go through all, whether, I'm not going to go through all of the conjunctions, but this was the way that this word, aleph and mem, was used in the language as well as a conjunction to tie together two different trains of thought. So basically, what I'm getting at is when we look at a mother, right, and how they understood the word for mother in an abstract, they understood it from the concrete of this is glue, this is something that binds things together, connects things, and it's like, oh, the mother does the same thing, right? So this is where the root or the base of this word comes from, right? So, with this being said, we can see the dual nature of how the mother can be viewed, right? In one sense, you could see these strong waters as a force that divides two lands, or you could see them as the waters that connect two lands, right? Uh, what what can we understand from this Hebrew word picture? It appears that a mother can represent strong waters or strong chaos. Keep in mind, from a concrete perspective, these waters can either be life giving or life ending. The only difference between the two is how forceful or aggressively they are flowing. In many cases, this can be the same body of water at different points of the season, right? So, again, like I said earlier, if these waters are flowing like this, who can cross it? Right? Nobody can. So they're gonna serve as a dividing barrier between one land or the other, which is okay if that's what they need to be used as. But you'll also see that I'm getting ahead of myself. Like I said, same body of water can be one way or another depending on the time of the season, and we'll see that in Joshua chapter 3, right? So Joshua chapter 3, starting at verse 4, it says, only keep a distance between you and it, about 2,000 cubits by measure. Do not come near it so that you know which way to go, for you have not passed over this way before. Now, this is Israel when they was getting ready to cross the Jordan into the promised land, right? So it says, and Joshua said to the people, set yourselves apart for tomorrow. Yahuwah is doing wonders in your midst. And Joshua spoke to the priests, saying, take up the ark of the covenant and pass over before the people. So they took up the ark of the covenant and went before the people. And Yahuwah said to Joshua, this day I begin to make you great before the eyes of all Israel, so that they know that I am with you as I was with Moses. And you command the priests who bear the ark of the covenant, saying, when you come to the edge of the water of the Jordan, stand in the Jordan. And Joshua said to the children of Israel, come near and hear the words of Yahuwah your Elohim. And Joshua said, by this you shall know that the living El is in your midst, and he is certainly driving out from before you the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Hivites and the Perizzites and the Girgashites and the Amorites and the Jebusites. See, the ark of the covenant of the master of all the earth is passing over before you into the Jordan. Now, we're going to see in a moment what's meant and what's going on here. There's a video or videos, actually, you can look up on the internet, on YouTube, that will show the Jordan during this time of the year, right? The Jordan during this particular time of the year is almost about like those waters that you see right there on the screen, right? So when he's telling them, stand out into this water and I'm about to do something miraculous before you, then it's not just a little stream and not just a little, like these waters are raging. And when he parts these waters, it's like, who could do this? Right. And they walk over across the Jordan on dry land. But and this is, and we'll see that the author puts it in there so that you know, because people from the area will come to the Jordan and be like, oh, the Jordan, because there's certain times of the year where the Jordan is not like that, and there's certain times of the year where it is like that. So he wants you to know, like, no, this happened during the time of the year when the Jordan is crazy, right? This was no small thing that was done in their sight. Okay, so Jumping down, where were we? We were on verse 11. It says, see, the ark of the covenant of the master of all the earth is passing over before you into the Jordan. And now take for yourselves 12 men from the tribes of Israel, one man from every tribe. And it shall be as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests who bear the ark of Yahuwah, the master of all the earth, come to the rest, come to rest in the waters of the Jordan, that the waters of the Jordan are cut off, the waters that come down from upstream and stand as a heap. And it came to be when the people set out from their tents to pass over the Jordan that all the priests, or of the Jordan, with the priests bearing the ark of the covenant before the people. And as those bearing the ark came from the Jordan, and the feet of the priests bearing the ark dipped in the edge of the water, now the Jordan overflows all its banks during the time of harvest. Right. So during this particular time of the year, they letting you know there's a lot more water flowing down through this Jordan. Right. And like I said, at your own leisure, you can look up some of these. There are videos where they show the Jordan during this time, and these waters are raging. So this same source of water can also be calm enough to be immersed in, and was where Yehukanai did his immersions, right? So this same water, this same Jordan River, can be calm enough that you can go and take a dip in it and not be swept away, right? Matthew 3:1, it says, in those days, Yehukanai the Mercer came proclaiming in the wilderness of Yehuda and saying, repent, for the reign of the heavens has come near. For this is he who was spoken of by the prophet Isaiah, saying, a voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare the way of Yahuwah, make his path straight. And Yehukanai had a garment of camel's hair and a leather girdle about his waist, and his food was locusts and wild honey. And it says, then Jerusalem and all Judah or Yehuda and all the country around the Jordan went out to him, and they were immersed by him in the Jordan, confessing their sins. And seeing many of the Pharisees and Sadducees coming to his immersion, he said to them, brood of adders, who has warned you to flee from the coming wrath? Bear therefore fruits worthy of repentance, and do not think to say to yourselves, we have Abraham as our father. For I say to you that Elohim is able to raise up children to Abraham from these stones. The axe is already laid at the root of the trees. Every tree then which does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. I indeed immerse you in water unto repentance, but he who is coming after me is mightier than I, whose sandals I am not worthy to bear. He shall immerse you in the set apart spirit and fire. His winnowing fork is in his hand, and he shall thoroughly cleanse his threshing floor and gather his wheat to the storehouse, but the chaff he shall burn with unquenchable fire. Right. So keeping all of this in mind, hopefully the historical context of how they viewed women in the house will help give some insight on what we should be focusing on today, and also give some insight on helping us indicate where some things might go wrong today in our modern times. Right. So again, just to recap all of it, we see women are these strong bonds in the house, right? These things, they serve as the bonding agent. They can keep everything together. They can keep everybody together, right? I'm stressing that because oftentimes I think the value of the woman's role within the household can be overlooked, right? And not just by the men, but by the women as well, right? Like the women can also look at their role as insignificant in the household, or look at their role as invaluable in the household because they're not technically, quote unquote, in the position of leadership, or they're not the head, right? But in the context of speaking, you got a righteous head, you got a righteous ish, right? Now, again, all of these things not going to apply towards when you're dealing with an unrighteous head, right? Which we dealt with that. We talked about that last week. But in the circumstances of righteous ish, righteous head, right? Woman taking care of the house, righteous isha. Sometimes it can the way that the roles are looked at partially because of modern day times, partially because of men not communicating as well as as the women do about how they feel, this, that, and the third. Sometimes it can be overlooked or misunderstood, and it can be they can have a feeling that is diminished. My goal is to show, nah, it's actually every role in this household is very important and very valuable. And just because one is not in the quote unquote head or lead position, that don't mean that you ain't holding this thing together, right? Like, it's very important. So yeah, we're gonna continue. When there is harmony in the house, you will see how the mother and father will be on one accord. The children will understand that they are to obey both the father and the mother equally, because it is understood that they are both one or on one accord, right? So the father will enforce what the mother says to the children, because he knows that what she is saying is from him, right? They already are on one accord. When this is not the case, there will be chaos in the house, right? So notice that the milm or the waters can also represent chaos, right? And this can take place again if the mother say is not understanding, or if the father doesn't understand, right, what this role or how valuable this role is in the house, one or the other, or however, right? When there's not unity in the house, then what can happen is you'll find where now it'll be the mother is saying one thing, father is saying one thing, or the mother desires one thing, father desires another thing, and then you're gonna see the children in between, and now the adversary can slide in, operate through them to increase it on one side or the other, and this is just how things can go, right? So Proverbs 1 and 8, right? When things are all on one accord and we're following how the father designed and patterned everything, this is how it's supposed to go, right? He says, my son, hear the instruction of thy father and forsake not the law of thy mother, right? There is no division between these two, right? This is a package deal when we dealing with this household. It says, for they shall be an ornament of grace unto thy head and chains about thy neck, right? Proverbs 6:20, it says, my son, keep the father's commandment and forsake not the law of thy mother. Bind them continually upon thine heart and tie them about thy neck. When you goest, it shall lead thee. When you sleepest, it shall keep thee. And when you awakest, it shall talk with thee. So it's some lessons and some things that you're going to learn from both sides. But even though you might learn different things from both sides, you're going to see how both sides still have to be on one accord with one goal in mind, right? But we all know that men have a way of teaching things. We were just talking about this earlier in the week. You know, men have a way of teaching things. Women have a way of teaching things. There are things that a child is going to learn from the mother that the father cannot possibly convey, and same vice versa, right? Proverbs 23:22. He says, hearken unto thy father that begat thee, and despise not thy mother when she is old. Again, when we dealing with the father in these commandments, he's going to hold you accountable to both, right? Father and mother. Because both father and mother are building up a household in what? My name. Then you get children, it is a trickle down effect. All right, so as mentioned, the mother can be either a leader to chaos in the house, or she can be a strong water in the house, right? Water can either be a destructive force or it can be used to purify and cleanse. It will be up to the mother to decide what kind of water she will be to her house, right? So will she work to keep the house clean, or will she bring ruin to the house? Right now, I don't want to get it misconstrued. I'm not saying, I do think that it is a very strong and valuable characteristic to have if a woman can physically keep the house clean. But that really wasn't what I'm getting at. I'm talking about spiritually here. Having an ability to be able to purify those in her house, right? I can speak from me and my situation and how our setup is. It's not going to be the case for everybody, but I can only speak on mine. And like, I'm relying on that with our Yellow Dean, because I'm gone out working most of the time. Most of the time, I'm gone. So be it that she's here with the children, this is a crucial in a critical piece of their development right now, because I just cannot be able, all of those things that she's pouring into them, I can't, because my time is spent elsewhere trying to provide, right? So just again, some do with it what you will. But I just say all of that to say that again, mother is very important to the household, right? So when I'll read that last sentence again. So it will be up to the mother to decide what kind of water she will be to her house. Will she work to keep the house clean, or will she bring ruin to the house? When water leaks in the house, it can damage the home. This can spread like a plague in the home, right? So we got a picture up there in the upper right hand corner of some water leaking in the home and not being in the house how it's supposed to be, right? You're supposed to have water in your home, but misplaced water, water where it ain't supposed to be in a home, is gonna damage the home. It's gonna mess it up, right? So Proverbs 19:13, it says, a foolish son is ruin to his father, and a wife's quarreling is a continual dripping of rain. Huh. So that's real interesting, right? Because we just saw that literally the mother is this glue or this bond, right? If in the house, if you will. But certain, we'll see certain things can be introduced if a woman is being quarrelsome, right? Or disturbing the peace in the home, right? Proverbs 27:15, drops that never cease on a very rainy day, and a contentious woman are alike. Whoever represses her represses the wind, and his right hand encounters oil. Mm, my dear. Proverbs 21, verse 9, it says, it is better to dwell in a corner of a roof than in a house shared with a contentious woman. And then just keep in mind, last lesson, how we looked at the design of the 4-room house, right? And we had the different chambers, and then we had the roof. So now you can actually visualize. He's saying it's better to be on the corner of the roof of one of those houses than actually in the house with quote unquote a contentious woman, right? Then Proverbs 25:24 says the exact same thing, right? So again, looking at the illustrations, y'all know I'm big on the illustrations. You got the man here looking at the leak in the roof, and he just shaking his head. What am I gonna do with this? Right? Then bottom, the man getting dripped on, and I just found it funny when you look at his face. Like the man is angry, backs turned to one another. What is we gonna do? Right? Ain't no shalom in this house. The roof is leaking, right? So notice these quote unquote waters, these strong waters that the woman are misplaced in the house can do more harm than good. I'll just put it that way, right? All right, so I wanted to take a second to look at this word for where they're saying a quarreling or a contentious woman, right? It's the word H4079, midan, which is a variation for 4066, which we'll look at next. Brawling, contention, or contentious, right? H4066, madon, from 1777, which we'll also look at, a contest or quarrel, right? So now notice we're talking about unity in a house. If a woman is in a contest with the ish, if it's a competition, right? And this is what's leading to the quarrel, it'll be a problem. Again, we talking about in the scope of a righteous household. Say you have a righteous ish, and he's leading his household in a way that it ought to go. He's crosses his, T's, dotted his I's. He's following Mashiach as best as he can, right? Then a battle or a fight, just because it's not going the way how you think it ought to go, or whatever the case might be, this is going to do more damage to the house than good. Now, again, not talking about the context of an unrighteous household. That's a whole nother thing. And it's a whole lot of other layers and levels to that, a lot more nuance. But in a context of righteousness, where we're dealing with us in the covenant, and we both coming together to try to navigate this unity that we're supposed to have, right? Just notice how this can be, right? It says brawling, contention, discord, strife, right? And then we're gonna look at the root. The root is Dean or Dune, right? Which is judgment, right? So it says a primitive root, compare H113 to rule, by implication to judge as umpire, also to strive as at law, to contend, to execute judgment, to judge, minister judgment, to plead the cause, to be at strife or strive, right? These are the things that it says it's better for a man to be in a roof in the corner somewhere and not even be in a house if these are the things that are present, right? Now, keep in mind that we looked at earlier, which we're going to look at it a little bit more in the future of this lesson. Y'all were designed to be what? A help suitable for the man, right? So, can you see how all of these things can be an issue if this is the type of waters that you are in the house? But you can also, again, be the purification, the washing, the cleansing in the house as well. Like I said, it's all going to be depending on which route y'all decide to take, right? Strong waters either way, but are you going to be a strong water in this manner or in the other? Go ahead. All praises. So, in the same way that the water is a necessary component to a functioning household, the mother is a key component to the household and its ability to function properly. Imagine a house without water. There will be no water for cleaning, bathing, or drinking. This is also the case with water that is in the house, but is not performing a task that is necessary to the house's ability to function. For instance, when you have water in the basement that is running rogue, it does damage to the home's foundation. If there is a water leak, it will do damage to the house and can bring a plague of mold and mildew and to the home. In the same way, if the mother is toxic in the home or is a leak to the home, it will spread in the home and affect everyone in the home if left unattended, right? And this is, we can look at Proverbs 14:1. It says, every wise woman has built her house, but the foolish breaks it down with her hands, right? So just keep in mind that in every woman and every mother is the ability to either build the house or to tear it down. And the choice is going to be 100% on you and what kind of strong waters or what kind of you're going to be in the house. All right. So the makings of the woman, right? So keep this in mind as we consider how and why the woman was made, right? So we won't go too much, supposed to be TOO, too much in depth with this, but here is something to consider as we continue, right? So Genesis 2:20. So the man gave names to all the livestock and the birds of the heavens and to the beasts of the field, but for the man there was not found a helper for him as his counterpart. So Yahuwah Elohim caused a deep sleep to fall on the man, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh in its place. And the rib which Yahuwah Elohim had taken from the man, he made into a woman and he brought her to the man. And the man said, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. Excuse me. This one is called woman because she was taken out of man. For this cause, a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. Right? So here's our word for rib, right? Selah, right? A rib as curved, literally of the body, or figuratively of a door, that is, leaf. Hence, a side, literally of a person, or figuratively of an object of the sky, that is, quarter. Architecturally, a timber, especially floor or ceiling, a plank, or or single or collectively, that is, a flooring, a beam, a board, a chamber, a corner, leaf, plank, rib, side chamber, right? So this is our word for rib. Hmm. This, now last week when we looked at we saw that the ob was what? We Mhm.
The strong leader,
Right, the
strong house.
strength of the house, right? These load bearers. We saw that it could also mean like a pole, like as in the tent pole to hold the tent up. But then we're gonna see that there are some quote unquote support beams to the what load bearing beam, right? And that's what these quote unquote ribs can symbolize. So, got some illustrations here, right? And just notice how the design, in these things, how they parallel, right? So, in the upper right hand corner, we got the framing of a house, right? These are the quote unquote ribs of the house. Then you got some ribs in a boat, and look at how much that resembles
Similar.
the rib cage, right? Now, each one of those beams that you see, each one of those studs that you see, they are support beams, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not enough of those, and the house ain't gonna work right. It ain't gonna stand, right? Wind and waves are gonna beat on it, just like we talked about last week. If it's not built on the sand, well, if you don't have enough support beams, then what's gonna happen? Wind and waves gonna blow, and it's gonna blow the house down, right? So very, very important. Again, the function when we're looking at this, and my mind is even more blown when we stop and we look at. No, this is the Father had all of this in mind when He designed all of it, and if we can function according to His design, like man, it's nothing but a win,
Right.
right? So notice the primary function of the ribs on the human body is to protect some of the most vital organs within the body. The heart, lungs, kidneys, and liver are all either partially or totally protected by the rib cage. The ribs protect the inward parts from external impact, right? When we look at them, we can see how they would be compared to timbers or support beams, right? So again, when we just physically look at how they operate,
Mm-hmm.
they support or they protect the inside from the outside, from things that occur on the outside, right? If I take my fist and ball it up and strike a man, right? Instead of just getting straight to his heart and he dead, or straight to his lungs, or straight to his kidneys, there's a rib cage to stand as a level of defense to protect those inward parts, right? Now, I mean, we kind of went over this a little bit when we looked at uh Genesis 1 through 3 when we was looking at the creation in the garden, but it's just something to keep in mind. As a side note, I'll say that oftentimes it'll get misunderstood. Women, because of today's society, will think that the best way to help the man is externally, right? But that's not really the case. We're gonna see that y'all were designed to help with the insides, the internal, the inward parts of the man, right?
Mm-hmm.
And y'all are best suited at doing that when y'all are operating in the function that the Father created y'all, such as the bonding, things like that. I just put it that way. A lot of the times, the outside world, that's where our fight is. We talked about this last week, right? The outside world is where the battle is for the men. You go out and you hunt for it or whatever the case is, and that's where your battle is fought. Home, when you come home, that's the place where it's like, I can speak for me again. Decompress from all of that. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to know about the outside world and the outside. Like when I'm here inside the home, it's like it's a whole different. I don't even. That's not where I need the help, right? I need the help with processing and getting the stability and coming back to home base within after dealing with all of that, right? That's usually how it is for the men. I just put it that way. I can't speak for us all, but I can speak for myself, and I bet that many would agree that a lot of times, though, because of this modern day culture and the agenda that is pushed forward, women often will feel like they don't have a value unless they're contributing externally, right? And then the internal things that a man might be dealing with might get overlooked and be viewed as less significant but it's really the opposite. It really is. It's really the opposite. And I'll leave that there. All praises. So Genesis 2:20, it says, and Adam gave names to all the cattle, and to the fowl of the air, and to every beast of the field. But for Adam, there was not found a help meet for him. Right. So that's what the woman was. She was created specifically for the man and designed specifically for the man in a specific way, protecting his inward parts to help be a protection to his inward parts for the man, right? Word for help, Ezer, right? To aid or to help, right? From H5826, Azar, which is to surround, which is what ribs do, right? Interesting. The Father's design. To surround, that is to protect or aid, to help, to succor, right? So it's not by no coincidence that the Father created the woman from a rib, from one of his ribs. And it wasn't a coincidence that Adam said what he said, because he understood this is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. He understood how she was made and why she was made, right? We talking about function here. So notice this is exactly what ribs do for the body, right? Father is brilliant. Man, I'm going to create something for the man to be his helpmate, right? A suitable help or aid, support, surround, protect for the man. What should I make him from? Should we do it from the dirt again? Nah, grab one of his ribs. He'll get it. Man, all praises. So they surround the inward parts, the vital organs, and protect them. It is my belief that this is exactly what the woman was made for and why Yahuwah chose to make her from the rib of the man, right? So just some stuff to keep in mind, right? Women are selfless nurturers. Tob women, Tob Imaz are, right? First Kings 3:16. And these two women were not even what I'll say is these women had some things that they could personally be doing better with themselves, right? But even in that, you still gonna see in one of these women a nature, right? That is just part of the design. Well, it says, then two women, whores, came to the sovereign or the king, which is Solomon, and stood before him. And one woman said, oh, my master, this woman and I dwell in the same house. And I gave birth while she was in the house. And it came to be the third day after I had given birth that this woman also gave birth. And we were together. There was no one else with us in the house, only the two of us in the house. So already we see a broken down household, right? Houses with no ish. And obviously the men that they were with, they were certain types of women living in a certain type of house. And here we are, right? So it's levels of breakdown that's already at place here, in play here, right? But anyways, we'll carry on. So it says, then this woman's son died in the night because she lay on him. And she rose up in the middle of the night and took my son from my side while your female servant slept, and laid him in her bosom, and laid her dead child in my bosom. And I rose up in the morning to nurse my son, and saw he was dead. But I looked at him closely in the morning and saw he was not my son whom I had born. And the other woman said, no, but the living one is my son, and the dead one is your son. And the first woman said, no, for the dead one is your son, and the living one is my son. And they spoke before the sovereign. And the sovereign said, the one says, this is my son who lives, and your son is the dead one. While the other says, no, for your son is the dead one, and my son is the living one. And the sovereign said, bring me a sword. So they brought a sword before the sovereign. And the sovereign said, divide the living child in two. and give half to one and half to the other. And the woman whose son was living spoke to the sovereign, for she was overcome with compassion for her son. An instinct kicked in, right? This is already, I mean, like these aren't the greatest, uh, most righteous examples, but this is part of the design, right? And she said, "Oh, my master, give her the living child, and by no means kill him." But the other said, "Let him be neither mine nor yours, but divide him." And the sovereign answered and said, "Give the first woman the living child, and by no means kill him. She is his what? Mother. Right? So again, just keep in mind that there are certain things that come with a mother, that come with the role of a mother, that can really, it's necessary to the preservation of the household. Right? So in the case with this child, we saw that the mother of this child was willing to give up the child just to spare the child's life. This is the love that a mother has for her child, right? So there are cases, on the other hand, when a mother cares more for herself than she does the child. When this is the case, the mother will do harm to her household. This sort of tumultuous interaction between the man and the woman was I'm sorry. These lines right here shouldn't be, this should be read afterwards. So I'm gonna come back to this point right here. We're gonna jump down to Deuteronomy 28, verse 53, briefly, right? It says, "And you shall eat of the fruit of your own body, and the flesh of your sons and your daughters, whom Yahuwah your Elohim has given you, in the siege and distress in which your enemies distress you. The man among you who is tender and who is very delicate, his eye is evil against his brother and against the wife of his bosom and against the rest of his children whom he leaves behind, against giving any of them the flesh of his children that he eats, because it is all that has been left to him in the siege and distress with which your enemy distresses you in all your gates. The tender and the delicate woman among you, who has not tried to set the sole of her foot on the ground because of her delicateness and tenderness, her eye is evil against the husband of her bosom, and against her son, and against her daughter, and against her seed which comes out from between her feet, and her children whom she bears, for she eats them in secret for lack of all, in the siege and distress with which your enemy distresses you in all your gates." Right? And we we know that this took place, this physically really took place. It came to pass during the passing of these curses,
Right.
because of our disobedience, right? 2 Kings chapter 6, 24 through 30 records a story of these two women that did this very thing, right? And they were complaining to the king because one child got ate, and when it was the other woman's turn, she said, it's time to eat, time to put him on the plate too, right? So this is a real thing, and it just goes to show you that something is severely broken in the household, right? But I say all of that to say, um, this sort of tumultuous interaction between a man and a woman was a result of the disobedience to the father's covenant. With this being said, we will see that the unity in the house is broken up and their very nature removed, right? So you're gonna find that because of our disobedience and following the father's covenant, his order, his ways, right, that certain things got introduced, brought in, and then we stopped, we forgot even what our nature and what was natural for us to do, and we started to operate in unnatural ways, right? Circumstances in this case, nothing else to eat, wind and waves beat on them, and they start doing unnatural things, right? In this case, the woman's natural nature to help her house is reversed. While this is not so much the case physically today, right? It is possible that this can be the case spiritually and stem from operating under a cursed mentality. A cursed mentality. Is it possible? Is what it was really a rhetorical, right? We'll see that these very things that we see here in this in these curses for both the man and the woman, they can still be at play today in a different way. It might not be physically you devouring your children and you cut them up and you put them on a fire and you ate them, but we'll see that it can be in other ways, right? In the disservice that both sides can do to their household and to the generations to come, right? When they don't operate according to their natural, the way that the Father designed them to be. Uh, we'll we'll see where the Father goes. Yeah, we'll see where the Father goes. We'll touch on it a little bit. Yeah, all praises. All right, so this may have seemed like an extreme example. However, it works the same way in the household spiritually. There's something to be said about the willing sacrifice of the mother for the children of the household. Because of this, in some cases, the children are an angle for the adversary to attack the order of the household through the mother. We see this take place with Rivka and her two sons. In this example, we see how division is brought into the house, but we will also see how she works to ensure both sons are preserved, right? So I say this to say that there's an ability to perform in both ways, right? So Genesis 27, verse 1, it says, "And it came to be when Isaac was old, and his eyes were too dim to see, that he called Esau, his elder son, and said to him, 'My son.' And he answered him, 'Here I am.' And he said, 'See now, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Now then, please take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt wild game for me, and make me a tasty dish such as I love, and bring it to me to eat, in order that my being does bless you before I die.' And Rivka heard when Isaac spoke to Esau his son, and Esau went to the field to hunt wild game to bring it. And Rivka spoke to Jacob her son, saying, 'See, I heard your father speak to Esau your brother, saying, bring me wild game and make me a tasty dish to eat, and bless you in the presence of Yahuwah before my death. And now, my son, listen to my voice according to what I command you. Please go to the flock and bring me two choice young goats, and I make a tasty dish from them for your father, such as he loves. And you shall take it to your father, and he shall eat it, so that he might bless you before his death.'" Excuse me. "And Jacob said to Rivka his mother, 'See, Esau my brother is a hairy man, and I am a smooth-skinned man. What if my father touches me? Then I shall be like a deceiver in his eyes, and shall bring a curse on myself and not a blessing.' But his mother said to him, 'Let your curse be on me, my son. Only obey my voice and go get them before me.'" Right? So very, very interesting. She even said, "Let the curse be on me." Right? So there's this natural nature, if you will, uh in the mother towards her children, right? But you can also see how that very thing, you can get played out of your position, right? It can be used against you. Same likewise with the father. Like we talked about last week, how the father is the strength of the house. He's the head of this house, right? But you can get played out of your position and tricked out of your position if you don't navigate that right, right? And so it's the same thing for the woman. You'll see how adversary, if we allow it, he can slide in and we can not operate within the function as we ought to. So it says, verse 13, "But his mother said, 'Let your curse be on me, my son. Only obey my voice and go get them for me.'" Right? So already an issue, because earlier we saw what? Obey your father and your mother, right? So in order for this obedience to take place with the yellow deem, the father and the mother are supposed to be on what? On accord. Here we see the father and the mother is on opposite accords. And so now it's obey my voice, and you're gonna have to pick and choose between which one of these voices you gonna obey. And that becomes an issue in the house, right? Like now she's saying my side, but my side ain't on one accord with the father's side. So it's an issue. So, and again, like I said, we talking about righteous households here. Unrighteous, that's a whole nother thing. But in a righteous setting, right? Um, Okay, so verse 14 it says, and he went and fetched them and brought them to his mother, and his mother made a tasty dish such as his father loved. And Rivkah took the best garments of her elder son Esau, which were with her in the house, and put them on Jacob, the younger son. And she put the skins of the young goats on his hands and on the smooth parts of his neck. Then she gave the tasty dish to and the bread which she had prepared into the hand of her son Jacob. And he went to his father and said, my father. And he said, here I am. Who are you, my son? And Jacob said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you said to me. Please rise, sit and eat of my wild game, be so that your being might bless me. But Isaac said to his son, how is it that you have found it so quickly, my son? And he said, because Yahuwah your Elohim brought it to me. Right? Jumping down to verse 41, after all things have gone bad, right? It says, and Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, the days of mourning for my father draw near. Then I am going to kill my brother Jacob. So again, notice that a strong chaos was brought in the house through the door that the mother opened, right? So again, seeing how this can work one way or the other. It's like I keep doing my hands like that because it's like it really is a balance. It's a balancing act when we're talking about these roles in the household. So he says, and the words of her elder son were reported to Rivkah, and she sent and called Jacob, her younger son, and said to him, see, your brother Esau comforts himself concerning you to kill you. And I find that very interesting because notice in this case, he's comforting himself in this. And for all intents and purposes, the we see it all the time, even today, that the natural way for this young man to have received comfort would have been going to his mother, right? But he can't go there because she's the culprit. She took part in this, right? So like literally, it's funny when you look at it and it's saying like the man and a woman will cleave to one another, and the man leaves the house of his mother and his father. Like there are a lot of there's a lot of nuance to it, but there are a lot of um let's just say adults ain't nothing but big kids. It's a lot of nuance to the emotional and the inward needs of both parties, and they don't go nowhere whether you a child or an adult. It's just the way that they are taken care of and dealt with changes a little bit, right? So children need both their mother and their father, right? And they receive different things from both their mother and their father, right? So you'll see that, and we'll keep it in the context of biblically speaking, when the young woman would leave the house of her mother and her father, right? When she would leave her father's house, that was her transitioning from where? From her father's house into what? The house of her Ish, right? And so you'll see a passing of the mantle where the Ish now starts to, in a different way, but the root of it is really the same thing, right? He starts to lead the Isha in the same way, and he takes on that role and that responsibility that her father once had for her, providing for all of these sorts of things, right? And you'll find that the same thing can be said when you're looking at young men, right? A lot of the emotional support and things like that they once received from their mother, you'll find once he becomes one with his Isha, that she'll take on, and she starts to wear that hat and fulfill a lot of that for the Ish, right? He might not necessarily go to his mama now, but his Isha is the one that he is confiding in, that he'll lay his shoulder on, right? So you'll see just how these roles of the masculine and of the feminine, of the male and the female, it was designed the way that it was designed for a reason, and it carries on from even from youth into adulthood. And even though the roles change, that emotional need really doesn't. It really doesn't. So yeah, that's just my tidbit on that. But yeah, I found that interesting. Um What verse were we at? We were at verse 43. It says, "And now, my son, listen to my voice and rise. Flee to my brother Laban in Haran, and stay with him a few days until your brother's wrath turns away, until your brother's displeasure turns away from you, and he forgets what you have done to him. And I shall send and bring you from there. Why should I be bereaved of you both in one day?" So now we see her trying to hold it together, but it's only after something that brought division occurred, right? And Rivka said to Isaac, I am disgusted with my life because the daughters of Heth. If Jacob takes a wife from the daughters of Heth, I or the Hittites, like these who are the daughters of the land, what is my life to me? Right. So just some, interesting stuff to keep in mind. Um, Proverbs 31, right? And this is kind of where we're going to end when we looking at the Ishas and the Imas, right? It says, "Who does find a capable wife? For she is worth far more than rubies." Rubies ain't cheap,
Nope.
right? Okay. And he said not just a little bit more, but far more. All praises. So it says, "The heart of her husband shall trust her, and he has no lack of gain." And we're gonna see that there's a reason why he trusts her, right? Why he ain't gonna be in need of anything, right? "She shall do him good and not evil all the days of her life." Huh. So remember how we was talking about on an individual level, how you gonna have to know this difference between this good and this evil, right? We was talking about all of that in the
Last
week before,
oh,
the 2 weeks before,
oh,
right?
Yeah.
And unity in self and how to have a united self, right? That don't go nowhere once you get married, right? Even though you the Isha still has to be led by the Ish. The Ish still has to lead. Do all of these things when we're talking about role, right? And that's just for order and function. But on an individual level, nah, the Father is still gonna hold all of us individually accountable, and that's just is what it is. He ain't gonna be partial because one is a man and one is a woman. That's not how that's gonna go, right? So just like the Ish still has to know the difference between good and evil, the Isha also has to know the good difference between good and evil and choose the good and turn away from the evil on both sides. And that unity and making that decision to choose the life or to choose the good, if both can be on one accord on that, then the household has a fighting chance, right? So he says, "She shall do him good and not evil all the days of her life. She shall seek wool and flax, and with delight she works with her hands. She shall be as the ships of Tarshish. She brings in her food from afar. She also rises while it is still night and provides food for her household. And what is lawful for her girls? She shall consider a field and buy it. From from her profits, she shall plant a vineyard." Now, one of the things that's overlooked in this is she not just haphazardly going out and buying a field, right? Just according to some willy-nilly, you know, it's not just no haphazard thing. There's a purpose and a reason why she's doing everything that she's doing. And she understands that this is to the betterment of the whole house, right? Isha's not gonna have no problem with her going and buying a field because this field is a field that she's bought for him, right? Man, all praises.
Right.
She know what I like. I can trust her. It already told you the trust that he has in her, right? I know that she not gonna just come and bring on any old thing before us, before me, right? She knows what I need, what is suitable for me, and she gonna go out and get it, right? So that it's done properly. Yeah, this is the way that it's supposed to go. You know, the Ish, he it's no slight on him leading or anything like that, because we're gonna read a little bit more and we're gonna see the kind of man that he is, even within this same bit of text. So it works. Basically, all parties have a contribution to the household. I'm gonna just leave it at that before getting sidetracked. But yeah, she shall consider a field and buy it. From her profits, she shall plant a vineyard. She shall gird herself with strength and strengthen her arms. Something about those bonds. She shall taste when her gain is good. Her lamp does not go out by night. Huh. Five wise, five foolish. What was the difference between them? But this wise woman here, her lamp doesn't go out. She shall stretch out her hands to the distaff, and her hand shall hold the spindle. She shall extend her hand to the poor, and she shall reach out her hands to the needy. So wait, both can be like both can operate in this, not just the Ish, but both. Oh, all praises. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household is dressed in scarlet. Says in another place how the sluggard says what? He's afraid of the snow, right? Oh, it's some snow outside. It's too cold for me to go and work. This woman, nah, staying busy, staying active. She knows what her house needs and she gets after it, right? And again, I don't want to misconstrue this with, because every household obviously is going to be different, and what each, there's some nuance to what each Isha is going to need, what each Ish is going to need based off of each individual's personality, circumstances, backgrounds, history, all of that. Each person is going to need different things, right? So it's no cookie cutter way that I can say it goes this way, do this, do that. I can't get into that. But what I can say is there are some basic principles that can be applied to each individual situation where that can help navigate to say, okay, this is what the Father is desiring. This is how he designed it. This is how he set it up. And if we follow these guidelines or these instructions, we can get there, right? And the nuance of it is just dealing wisdom with one another, and each one will know, okay, no, this is how my Ish leads. This is how my Isha supports. This is how, and there's still room for the dance between those two becoming one flesh. Right. And I just put it that way. Right. So it's that. Go ahead.
I was going to add that it shows like this woman is a selfish nurturer. A part of her lamp not going out through the night is her being up, accomplishing things she may have not had time to get to during the day because of other aspects of her role. Like she may have been up with the children throughout the day, but she's going to stay up and go that extra mile or those extra miles throughout the night to add value to the household. Or here, like seeing by the time winter came, her house was prepared because she's getting things done. Whereas Rivka's vexed at the thought of the daughters of Heth because what they're going to contribute or bring forth ain't necessarily going to benefit the household nor what the household stands for. So then all that effort that was brought forth by the progenitors is going to be washed away if the same level of diligence and fortitude isn't brought forth. It's very, very interesting.
All praises. All praises. All praises. It says, she shall make tapestry for herself. She is dressed in fine. Oops. She is dressed in fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates. So again, this woman, we're not talking about a man that is unrighteous, right? We're not talking about an Ish that is one given to folly or a no good, a good for nothing. That's not what we're talking about, right? We're talking about this woman is able to, she's this for her Ish and able to hold him down because he's also handling his business on his side, right? It says, her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. He's not a fool. He has wisdom too, right? She shall make fine linen and sell them, and shall give girdles for the merchants. Strength and splendor are her garments, and she rejoices in time to come. She shall open her mouth with wisdom, and on her tongue is the Torah of loving commitment. So, if he in the gate with the elders, do that mean that it's on his tongue too? And could it possibly be that they on one accord with this thing here, and that even perhaps he pouring into his Isha, right? So of course there wouldn't, if that's the case, and he's the quote unquote strong leader, or he's the strength of his house, then you shouldn't see no issues or no breakdown as long as we on one accord on doing the good and not the evil. It shouldn't be no breakdown. It should be easy for the woman to operate and follow right in suit, right? Because he gonna make it easy for her, and she gonna make it easy for him. That's the way it's supposed to work, right? Mm. So then notice what it says. It says, she shall open her mouth with wisdom, and on the tongue, and on her tongue is the Torah of loving commitment. She watches over the ways of her household, and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children shall rise up and call her blessed. Her husband too, and he praises her. Many daughters have done nobly, but you have risen over them all. Loveliness is deceptive, and prettiness is vain. Huh. So, but notice the principles of this system is the opposite, right? All them things that we talked about, that ain't nothing, right? What do they like? I mean, if you just look at some of the stuff that's on the internet these days, the value of a woman is 100% based off of the physical and whatever other unnatural. I'm gonna just put it like this: a lot of what we see these days is it's a perversion, and it's very unnatural in this system, right? You know, to keep it as clean as possible. The more work that, and the more under the knife one goes to feed into whatever carnal fetish the man has, that's what they put value on these days. But can be all of the other boxes what really makes the toe woman, none of them boxes have to get checked. According to this system, it just goes to show you how the adversary works and is working against the people. Same likewise when we talking about the men. A man that's actually leading and doing those sorts of things in the house, providing in the house, and like they don't really put a lot of value in that in the mainstream media. In the, you see more commercials with it the other way around than you do going in that direction. And I just leave it there. But yeah. Says loveliness is deceptive and prettiness is vain. A woman who fears Yahuwah is to be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her works praise her in the gates. All praises. So with this being said, hopefully we can all learn from this and the role of the mother in the household. And we have reached the end of this portion of the lesson, right? So Hebrews 4:11 again. Let us therefore do our utmost to enter into that rest, lest anyone fall after the same example of disobedience. For the word of Elohim is living and working and sharper than any two-edged sword, cutting through even to the dividing of being and spirit, and of joints and of marrow, and able to judge the thoughts and intentions of the heart. And there is no creature hidden from his sight, but all are naked and laid bare before the eyes of him with whom is our account. You know what? Before there was one other thing that I wanted to mention. Again, we talking about righteous households. We're not talking about an unrighteous household. But I can say this much because it was on a slide earlier when we were looking at contention, right? A lot of times the contention with the Ishais can be stemmed in not understanding how the father might be dealing with the Ish on a matter. Again, I have to preface this by saying this is 100% dealing with righteous households, but it just got brought back to my mind that I didn't mention it. And so since it did, instead of ignoring it, I'll go ahead and share it. But a lot of times it's not understood why the Ish might be moving a certain way. And the way that he might be moving, the way that he's moving is because the father is dealing with him in a certain way. And that's not a lesson that he can get from anywhere else except from his head, right? Sometimes the Isha will see it or disagree with the way that the thing is going on. And that can cause the quote unquote dissension or the contention, the strife, the debate, within the household, right? Notice that the root of that word madon was doom, or the word for judgment, right? She can start to cast judgment on the ish, noticing, no, this is why would you do it this way? You're not so and so and so and so. You're not so and so and so and so. Now, again, we're talking about in a righteous standpoint, he's doing the best that he can, and he just getting pulled by the hand of the Father, just like everybody else. And he's got certain things that he has to learn for himself if he wants to be any value to the rest of his household, right? If he gonna lead his household, it's certain things that he's gonna have to learn from his head, and he can't learn it from his Isha. It's not, it will never work that way. He got to learn it from the Father. The Father has to work on him so that he can in turn be a benefit to the Isha that the Father gave him, right? But in the vacuum of it, sometimes it's like, no, well, this thing, yeah, I see, yeah, but the Father is dealing with this individual and this person as a whole. Same likewise as with the Ishas. The men sometimes can, there are certain lessons that the men will be like, yeah, well, I'm trying to lead us in this direction. The Father is leading me in this direction. Isha don't see it, but there are some things that the Father might have to individually work on with the Isha to say, hey, no, you're going to learn. I set it up this way. He's doing what I told him to do, and you're going to see XYZ. So I just say all that to say that in a righteous setting and in a both parties are of the covenant, both parties are trying to operate in righteousness, that sometimes that can be an issue as well. But the goal is for the whole house to have harmony. And I find that that's probably more so the issue in more cases when we're talking about us in the walk than some of the other things. Like, that's why I didn't even bother putting in the strange woman and stuff like that, right? Like, it's no point in me going over the strange woman, because I'm talking to us that's in this walk, us that's in this covenant, right? They have joined themselves to the Father already. We've already made that choice and made that decision to say, all that he has said we will do. Now it's just a matter of us navigating and saying, okay, so what does unity look like for our household, and how can we navigate in unity and achieve what he is telling us to do? So that's really, yeah, where I'm at with that. So
Very
yeah,
well said. Very well said.
all praises, all praises.
Um, I just wrote some things down throughout the lesson and just wanted to pour. That's okay.
All praises.
Okay. um, so these are things that you may have already said, but I just wrote down ways to help build the house and then ways to destroy the house. So ways to help build the house. I just said, ask the Ish how we can become the proper helpmate, or is it helpmeet? Helpmeet for our Ish. The woman was created for the Ish. Once we understand how to be a proper helpmate to our Ish, then it is time to help build the house. Be the glue that sticks the wood together. Complete daily functions, duties, and responsibilities that we are to do. As you mentioned, each may lead his household differently. So it is very important for the Ishas to learn how our Ish leads. Um, it is important for the women to actually help the household and not display forceful help. Meaning, the woman should not try to help the Ish where he does not need it. And after we understand and ask how to be a proper helpmate, then we should listen and respond well. Also, some ways to help build the house would be to prepare ourselves spiritually, with prayer, fasting, scripture reading, making sure that our relationship with Yahuwah is golden, so we can be all that we need to be for ourselves, our Ish, our children, and other people. And then just ways to destroy the house would be to be against your Ish and his leadership, to refuse to submit to the order or instructions, refusing to help your righteous Ish or the children, having bitterness or anger, lack of forgiveness, tearing down your Ish and not building him up, and then same for the children. And also seeing the problem or the drip, but not caring or allowing the drip or our mouths to continue, though it is causing the house to crumble. Like the picture you showed, the lady had an umbrella, And it was like she was looking as if she had no idea what caused the problem. But then, some women don't know, and like you said, the E should explain to her, okay, this is the problem. But some women do know, and they just don't care. Oh, I'm
Mhm.
gonna say my bit. I don't care what you say, and I'm gonna just let it all lash out. Um, and then I just wanted to also mention when you were talking about the virtuous woman, how knowing what field the Ish needs, it means that the Isha has taken her time to really learn her Ish. Learning the needs of the household. You don't know what to buy unless you're watching, you're looking, you're observing to make sure that, okay, my Ish will be okay with this because I've learned, him. I've watched, I've learned um, the needs of the house. And then finally, be happy and content with our function and responsibilities, knowing that what we do as women and as Ishas are enough. Um, Yahuwah rewards us according to our works. And then, like you mentioned, remembering that we are not the heads of our Ish, but Yahuwah is. And sometimes less is more. And just those are just some things that I was thinking about. I also think that when you were talking about the women taking on what the man needs instead of their mothers was a beautiful point. I don't think I really even looked at it like that before, because it's like for the Isha, the Ish is coming on being the leader, and then same for the Ish. It's like, oh, that's true. If you really think about it, it's extremely true. It's just switching, I guess, people. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Mhm.
But you're still providing, all of that within the household.
Mhm. They're leaving the house of their mother and their
Yeah,
father, and they're
and
becoming one flesh.
yeah. So
Hmm.
if we think of it that way, it's like, okay, I think that us being nurturers, and it should already be in us, for like you said, the righteous women with the righteous household, that that should be something that we should be happy about, and just protecting those areas, those inner areas, and stuff like that. So yeah, overall, excellent lesson as always. I got a lot from it, wrote a lot of things down, as you can tell, and just wanted to mention those things.
All praises. Yeah, all praises.
All praises to the Most High. Is it okay if I jump in on that as well?
All praises.
All right. I do want to, just like Sis was saying, like Akoti was saying, and I wanted to just jump back to a few points in the lesson where you were bringing out some stuff, because it was some really tough points made. And I just want to kind of backtrack just a little bit. And this is for Most High willing, just for the benefit of anybody who's going to be listening after the fact, and for those younger women, or, those who just may not know, you know, um, as an encouragement, Most High willing, hopefully. But I do want to just go back to a few points that you were making previously, talking about why, the woman's position might be devalued, or how it could get to, how we could kind of like lessen ourselves or our roles, or, what have you, whatever. There was a lot of stuff that was touched on, but I also want to touch on, and it was touched on a little bit, but I want to just bring a different perspective as well. I want to, number one, encourage the women to look into and read Sirach, or Ecclesiasticus, chapter 26, the whole chapter 26. Just like Proverbs
Mhm.
31, the whole chapter 31 is really told for, the woman, virtuous woman, and so on and so forth. Sirach chapter 26 is an extremely, extremely told chapter about, the difference between, and the differences between a good wife and an evil wife. Talking about how, because you had brought out earlier as well, the contentions of a wife are like a continuous drip. And, those scriptures that are also in Proverbs, and it's better to live in your attic than to deal with a contentious or a brawling woman, and just kind of laying back off of what this was saying, and just to kind of bring out a few points in that Proverbs 26. So speaking to how women's position in the home can be devalued. Um, Not only has society devalued our position, we as women have devalued our position as well. But I do kind of want to also put some of this on the Isha's shoulders as well. Is speaking with the righteous and not righteous, families, like even within the community that we're in. And this is what I'm speaking to, not necessarily anyone here or anything like that, but we could see some situations when we look throughout this walk where, it is kind of like, man, what kind of doctrine are y'all preaching? You know what I'm saying? Like, and and so, like I said, I just want to speak to those who may not, or know or understand. And the Ishas or the men can have a hand in devaluing that woman's position because, as you so aptly brought out earlier, we are an Ezer. We are a helpmeet. When you look through Sirach chapter 26, even when you look through, as you brought out those Proverbs, chapter 1, chapter 6, chapter 23, despise not the law of thy mother, forsake not the commandment of your father. It's literally talking about the warnings of the father and the pointing, the instructions of the mother. We kind of get to a point where we're thinking that it's only dealing with the kids and so on and so forth. But that proverb, but the Sirach 26 is also dealing with the woman and how she is an Ezer, or how she is a help unto her Ish. And a lot of times the man not understanding how the father operates with the Ish as well can kind of make the woman feel devalued sometimes, and can kind of contribute to the devaluing over time of the woman's position, because there's a lot of situations and a lot of rhetoric out there where, oh, the woman's supposed to learn in silence. Oh, the woman ain't supposed to do this. Oh, the woman ain't supposed to do that. When there are just as many testimonies or witnesses in the scripts, if not more, somebody can go through and count them if they want to, of the father honoring the woman's words, honoring the woman's position, honoring the woman's actions, as opposed to when she has been dishonored, so it kind of, a light can get shined on a lot of times how the woman has been a destruction to a man and this, that, and the third, and not so much tov light put on how she has been a help or a build up for that man, unless she's just told to, shut up and do this, shut up and do that. Well, when you look at Sirach 26, it goes into how her discretion or her discernment, her discretion will cause that man to rejoice. It does also talk about how her silence does cause him to, and it says something about her silence as well. I'm summarizing everything. I'm not reading it verbatim, but it does talk about her silence. I don't necessarily have what's the concordance for the Apocrypha, but when you look at all the terms or words for silence, and then when you also pair that with the testimonies of the different women and see how that silence was used and honored. So different words for silence, one can mean her stillness or her trust. One word can mean her letting alone of something. And it can also mean her holding her peace. So it doesn't necessarily speak to her not being able to speak to her Ish in no way, shape, or form, which is what I'm speaking to. Sometimes that rhetoric can go out there that, no, you're not supposed to say nothing to your Ish. If he's doing something that you're not supposed to say nothing to him, you can't correct him, you can't say nothing to him, da, 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 da. That's not correct. It talks about in Sirach that a wife is a strong tower to her husband. As I already stated in 26, a wife is a righteous wife. Her discretion and her discernment causes him to rejoice. That woman, that wife, that virtuous woman will double his days. Why? Because they're supposed to be, and it was brought out in Proverbs as well, the law of life, the law of kindness, and the law of so on and so forth, it should be found on her tongue. because of our discretion and what the Father have is showing us at times is like going to, if our issues will allow it, give him a different perspective so he can make a more educated decision or a better well-rounded decision, on one front as opposed to the other, because literally that's what we're there for. If that's what the scripture is saying about it, then that's what we're supposed to be there for, is to help him, not only help him be fruitful and multiply himself in the earth through our seed, but also a tower against death to preserve his life. And there goes that border, there goes those waters, there goes those, and I want to also encourage any other women who may listen to this after the fact, to definitely cultivate your relationship with the Father on your own. Because your husband cannot be a conduit for you to reach or be spoken to by the Father. Like you have to have, there's even provision in the law. If a man has no son, guess what? The daughter now has authority and now has inheritance and now there's provision in the law. If a man is trying to make a fool of or devalue that woman, the Father is not going to look kindly on that. The Father cares about his daughters, period, point blank. Even so much so, he refers to the whole nation in the feminine at times. He cares so much about his daughters. So we cannot allow, as his daughters, something else, just like the man cannot allow his woman to step in ahead of the Father and be that which is, his all in all. Yeah, you're supposed to cling to your wife, but that's not supposed to be your all in all love, and you're not supposed to listen to the Father. No. Same thing for the daughters. Same exact thing for the daughters, because the Father will use you as a daughter to speak to that son, just like he'll use his son, because we are his daughters before we're his wife. He is his son before he's your husband, period. And he will use us. There's that balance, that check and that balance at times. And he'll use us to speak to a situation. And here's where the silence comes into play. Because when I look back at the testimonies and the witnesses, because if you speak not to the law and to the testimony, there is no light in them, right? That's in Isaiah, right? So if I can't look at this in the writing and see an example of it, then what you talking about, right? So it talks about the silence of a woman, and then the examples of the women who have been honored. How have they been silent? Best example I can bring up is Abigail.
Mm-hmm.
That is one extremely tove example that I can bring up is Abigail. Did she not tell her husband? Or was she just silent in all of that? No, she used her discretion and told her husband at an opportune time, listen, you messed up, Mike. You messed up. And the Father honored her word, because he did mess up.
Yeah.
Also, Esther, or hold up, Esther's discretion. She was used for such a time as to save an entire nation. Royal lineage was birthed through her. Did she go off running off at the mouth? No, she held her peace up until an opportune time to say, listen, this is going on with my people, and you have allowed this thing. Our enemy is here getting ready to try to destroy us. Please do not let this happen. She used her discretion and her wisdom to bring forth something that the Father has set her in position to do. Set her as a wife to a dignitary in order to preserve the whole nation. So when it talks about women being in silence and all of that, yeah, because we're not supposed to nag that man. Not at all. But does that mean we don't say anything to our husbands? No, if the father is giving us a warning about something and giving us discretion because, hey, I'm looking at how this can play out and I want you to be aware of this or I want you to be aware of that and blah, blah, blah. No, we're supposed to say that. But are we supposed to nag that man about that thing? No. Why? Because he's his son first. And I can guarantee you this, when it's done and over with, the father is going to let the whole, like when the chips fall, the father going to show, okay, was that a warning from me or not? And it's up to that man, just like it's up to us to decide what kind of Isha we're going to be, whether we're going to build our house or destroy it. So it's up to that Ish to, kind of decide, okay, after I see how this plays out, like after he sees how this play out, okay, it was the father working through her, using her, or was he not? Like the father's gonna make it clear, and he always does. So I just want to encourage the women as well, because and this is a walk. We don't all have it together. We have not walked in this thing, even those of us who might have been in this walk 20, 30 years. We don't have it all together. We don't. We just simply do not. And we cannot expect to have it all together. So we're trying to forge these marriages and we're trying to forge these relationships, walking righteously and walking as one, hand in hand. This takes time to learn one another, and it takes time to learn how the Father uses us, and it takes time and dedication to do so, in a manner that is pleasing unto the Father. Like, nobody gonna get this overnight, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that I'm not supposed to still be seeking the Father and forging and cultivating my own relationship with the Heavenly Father and my husband. That don't mean my husband's not supposed to be cultivating his relationship with the Father and everything is all on him. No, everything is not all on the Ish. At the end of it, the final decision, yeah. But just like, war is made, what does it say about counsel? There's wisdom in counsel. So if that wife is well instructed. It also says in Sirach 26, a wife with a continent mind and one that is well instructed. It speaks highly of one like that. So if you're finding that that's your wife, that's something that you should be encouraging in your woman and your wife, is to have a continent or restraint, temperate mind and well instructed mind. And if she has that, you don't devalue her position by telling her, no, that's not it, this is it, or that ain't this and this ain't that, da, da, da. Don't devalue that position that she has in the Father, because very well the Father could be speaking to you through that woman. And if you don't listen, you'll find yourself between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, there definitely has to be a mutual level of humility throughout the household. That way, the Father's Spirit, as it finds place to rest, also has an ear to speak to when He's pleased to speak through whomever He speaks through, whether it's through the children. The parents need to be able to hear the Father's voice, recognize wisdom when it's wisdom, be humble enough and not in haste all the time, to where you can take a moment to listen and consider, and when it's needed, reconsider. Yeah, because there's definitely been times where I didn't want to hear, didn't reconsider, and realize later, like, yo, I should have listened. And, you know, it's not always the case, but there's definitely room for it, because the Father will use whom is available at the time. And as a man, you can't get your mind made up in a way that I'm going to do it like this. This is the plan I got, and I'm about to go. And it might be that last little opportune time to hear a voice of reason so that you can make a more calculated decision. It's definitely a valid point.
No praise. Because I just want to speak to it, like, we still, as the mothers, And as Ox so aptly brought out, and that was beautiful and eloquent, that everything that was studied, the word study, and how the depiction of the mother and of the woman, Amma, that border. It could be chaotic waters, could be calm waters, but either way, it's a border. Sometimes it's a point of division, or a place of separating. Everything within the borders is supposed to operate this way. We still have, as the women, let's say, for example, our ish is going off. We still have to do what we have to do. That's why I'm encouraging, any women who might be listening to this afterwards to cultivate your relationship with the Father, because also talks about in Sirach, mother have been given the authority over sons. We still have these children within our borders. That's why it's pertinent to understand that in the law, when there is no man or son, that now the woman does have inheritance and somewhat of an authority. Does she have the final say so and all of this and that? No, she still needs to be covered. But at the end of the day, there still needs to be some level of protection. There still needs to be some level of defense. We still have to have our relationship intact with the Father to be able to provide that beyond whatever else anybody else is saying. Like if my H is going off, I still have to have my head on my shoulders and a connection with the Father that I can guide these children regardless. Because it also speaks about in the in the Brit Hadashah New Testament that, for a woman, if she have an unbelieving husband or have a wavering husband or whatever it is, that by her chaste speech, there's that continent mind again. There's that well-instructed mind. She might be able to turn him. Not the nagging, no. Her chaste tongue. And through her diligence, she might be able yet to turn that man. So I still have to have myself in order as a woman, as a mother, as a wife, with the Father, in order that, guess what? The borders don't be broken straight through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
again, it's a very beautiful dance once it's all said and done, because there are times where, again, there is additional counsel needed.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, like God brought up, sometimes it's, no, we got to ride this wave because there's some things below the surface that are being developed that are only going to be developed by us going this way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we were a more mature nation, like before the downfall and destruction and scattering, before marriage happened, certain things would already have been developed and understood.
Mm-hmm.
But being connected on this side of it, we're going through these developmental processes together.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it really has to be mutual respect, so that there can be mutual humility, but also patience,
Mm-hmm.
so that as the play develops, we can see, okay, where we actually on this thing. Because you can't always tell what it is from the onset.
Mm-hmm.
It might feel like, okay, we're going astray, but then once it all plays out, that's not the case. Again, it's a very, very beautiful dance, this walk together with the Father, because some of the things we go through with us being in this together, you might have to ride a curve so that I can gain my next level of humility with the Father.
Mm-hmm.
And likewise, this household might go through something so that you can be added to once it's all said and done.
Absolutely.
And it's all for the salvation of us. So yeah, this flesh might go through some tumultuous things. Sometimes because we took a wrong turn. Sometimes it's not because it's a wrong turn, but it's necessary for our souls to be saved as we're being developed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I want to say that there comes that stillness, there comes that silence for the woman.
And the man at times.
Yeah, because it does in the Apocrypha, it does talk about a shamefaced man, and it gives in the Father's words, like we were talking about this off line a little bit, and I was just remarking how the Father's word it just be so profound sometimes when you realize it's like, dang, he ain't lied not a one time. He ain't lied not a one time. There's just like there's warnings for the man about the woman, there's warnings about the woman for the man, and vice versa. Like he leaves no stone uncovered. This is why I say And I just want to keep encouraging women, cultivate your own relationship, because we can't sit here and just act like, we're not supposed to,
Yeah,
or
just
act.
no personal responsibility in order
Yeah,
to make the kingdom.
exactly. No, there is absolutely personal responsibility,
Hmm.
and there's absolutely, like we have to be aware.
Yeah.
We have to be aware, and it even tells mothers and fathers, beware of your own children. Like, he leaves no stone unturned. There's
Hmm.
no excuse. And so, speak to what you were talking about, there's that stillness when it comes about for the woman. And like I said, there's many different words or definitions for silence. I've gotten, like H2790, I think it's H1847, and I'm looking at all of those definitions together because, like I said, I don't have a concordance for the Apocrypha. But when you use whichever word you want to in the context of the scripture, you put it in there, which one is going to apply. So the example you were just talking about, because sometimes, no, it's not, it might look like we're going off, sometimes we're not going off, sometimes it's a necessary roller coaster ride because there's something that the Father's trying to pull up out of us or deposit into us.
Hmm.
There's that stillness and that silence and that trust. There we go, the trust, because I have to trust as your wife and as your Isha, that the Father, that you are being dealt with by the Father,
Hmm.
and that not necessarily that you know what you're doing, but that, what I'm saying, that we're okay. And I have to not nag, not become that contentious dripping,
Hmm.
but I have to still myself, and I have to cast my cares upon the Most High, cultivate my relationship with the Father, because, and I can speak personally for our household, when there are times when it looks like that, when it did look like that, and I'll just be like, Father, get your son. He don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what? Chill. You don't know what I'm doing right now. And I can absolutely speak to that.
Hmm.
There's that stillness, because when it seemed like on my end, Father, I tried to tell him this, I tried to tell him that, he keep on going, then I have to have such a relationship with the Father to be able to run to my daddy and say, hey, Dad, listen, Pops, what's wrong with your child? What's wrong with your son? And he will absolutely, no, chill,
He's making something.
chill. Because at the end of the day, like I said, this is, like I said, coming from my personal experience.
Hmm.
That's his son. That's his son. That ain't mine. That's my husband, yeah. But at the end of the day, listen, this your son. You know what you're doing with him, because at the end of the day, I know you got me. And he does. He brings it around full circle. And when you're, and this is what I have found, just speaking personally for me, still, let's do it. I'm gonna see where it goes. After it's all said and done, when I see where it goes, he brings it full circle, and the lesson, he reveals it all. The lesson comes through. That's how I can say with such confidence, yo, he be teaching me something on this end, and then come to find out, when my Ish and I have a conversation about the lessons we've been learning, he been working with us in our various capacities.
Hmm.
He been teaching me this same lesson, but in the manner in which I will receive it, and he been teaching him, working on him with this lesson, but in the manner in which he will receive it. And it all comes down to, it all like shakes together at the end of it, after that stillness and that silence. And I'm like, yo, you're right, we was all right. And I see what the Father have done, and hallelujah.
And that's where we supposed to walk by our fidelity unto the Father, knowing that if we're doing our utmost with His help to do as He would have us to do, that He's going to work it to our toe instead of going off of what we can see.
Mm-hmm.
And because it looks scary, now we're trying to avoid it. You have to trust Him for sure. But yeah, As a man, definitely have to be open to hear, whether it's coming from our ish or from somebody else. Uh, yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful
Yeah.
when it's done in trust unto the Father.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah. Comes to my mind is like Ephesians 5. So like the thing at the end of the day, everyone's goal in the household has to be for the father to get the esteem, right? And it's like the father, he will always do what he does so that he can be the one to get the esteem. So like the point about humility is really a significant, it's a weighty matter in all of it, because if that part is overlooked, then there'll be a problem, like from whichever side. You know what I mean? Like it says in Ephesians 5, starting at 5:19. Well, we can start at 17. He says, "So then do not be foolish, but understand what the desire of Yahuwah, what Yahuwah is. And do not be drunk with wine, in which is loose behavior, but be filled with the Ruach, speaking to each other in psalms and songs and praise and spiritual songs, singing and striking the strings in your heart to the Master, giving thanks always for all to Elohim the Father in the name of our Master Yahushua Mashiach, subjecting yourselves each to each other in the fear of Elohim." So it's like really when we look at it, and then it starts to go into wives, husbands, and that whole thing. But really, when we look at it, it really is, when it comes to the Father, everything is about humility, like we say every week. And it's always about how can we serve one another. And as long as that's what the goal is, if the ish is okay, how can I to the best of my ability through serving the Father serve this household? How can I serve, be of service to my children, be of service to my Isha? Then as bumpy as it gets, there's gonna be a win in it. You know what I mean? It might be lessons that have to get learned along the way, because like I said, hey, we be learning on the fly a lot of the times, on both sides. A lot of it is learning, uh manager and training. You know what I mean? Like MIT, like you learning on the fly, but through those experiences you'll get it. You know what I mean? And so, and the same vice versa with the Isha. Like if the sole purpose is okay, how can I be of service, right? First, obviously, first and foremost is the Father, and it's like, all right, through serving the Father, how can I be of service to my Ish and to my children, right? Like when everybody has the mindset of serving one another, then the whole uplifting of the house, it don't have no choice but to go up. You know what I mean? And even the children have a role in that. Like that's why he says all of these warnings about children: honor your mother and your father. It says in another place, don't you know that this is the one command that comes with promise? Like it's the one that comes with a reward. Like if you honor, your day is gonna be numbered, or gonna be many. You know what I mean? So it's like, if everyone has a mind and a heart for serving one another, then the house doesn't have any choice but to be upright house that stands strong and is on that foundation of the stone that we was talking about versus the sinking sand. So yeah, all praises, like, definitely is very important, because that is one of those things that is often overlooked and misunderstood a lot of the times today, with just the relationship between, and not even with just the man and the woman, but like the children, like the whole everything, like the whole household structure has been perverted today. And like Uncle C said, sometimes even within this walk is perverted. You know what I mean? So yeah, definitely valuable insight. All praises.
Yeah, I was just gonna say too, like I try to have like compassion and mercy on that, knowing that the Father, the same mercy and compassion the Father has with me. Like when I'm like trying to get it right, I'm messing up. And so for me, I'm always like, okay, let me think. If I respond in this way, do I want the Father to respond in that same way to me? if I want Abby Hood to be like, okay, all right, daughter, okay, just I always try to remember to have the same compassion and mercy that I have on my Ish, as Abby Hood has on me. And then, of course, like you were saying, like everyone's saying, the humility part. So, when Abby Hood's will has been revealed, and when his plan is occurring, regardless of who said it or not, all praises to Abby Hood. Thank you, Father, for helping us to see, okay, this is your will and this is your will. Um, and the prayer, should be, Abiyahud, please help us, give us, wisdom and understanding to be able to learn from this mistake or to grow from it, and just, yeah, stay in that humble mindset and don't be so quick to say, I told you so. I told you, and you can talk about it and everything, but I think there's a difference between like beating somebody down versus, okay, all right, yeah, all right, let's talk about it. What are your thoughts? What are you thinking? And if everyone is thinking in their right mind, the Ish or the Isha usually be like, yeah, you was right, or yeah, I see that now. And then if that's the case, the other person should be like, all right, cool, all praises,
Yeah, like
hallelujah,
that's the goal. Yeah,
thank you,
all
Father,
praises.
instead of trying to beat a dead horse. You know what I mean? Like just staying in that humble mindset. Um, so like you were saying, Abihu can get all the esteem and all the praise. Um, so yeah, definitely a beautiful dance, and constantly learning for
Hmm.
sure. Thankful to be in the race, and for me, just thankful to have an Ish, after Yahuwah's heart, that we
Oh my
can be in the
dear.
race together. You know what I mean?
Oh dear.
No, I'm just saying, like, some people
Where they
are,
climb out the skin now.
some people are doing it alone,
All
and
praises.
may Abihua answer the prayers of all of his people who wants to have that union. But I'm just thankful to be able to have it and to be able to go in this walk together. You know what I mean? And we slip, we fall together. We walk and we happy, we dance together, we cry together, whatever the
Yeah.
case may be. You know what I mean? But we're doing it
We
together, and that's the key. Yeah. So yeah, just it's beautiful, and yeah, beautiful lesson.
yeah, all praises. Like really that's the main thing. It's just how we can work with one another so that we can, ultimately both reach into the destination together of where the Father is trying to get us. Like that's what the end all be all is really of it is how can how can we accentuate our strengths that the Father has given each one of us individually and bring it together so that we can all so that everybody can be of a benefit. You know what I mean? And that's really what the goal is. Um, Man, there was one more thought that had crossed my mind, and I don't
The
remember it right
waters.
now.
Was it about the waters?
No,
Well, you put up Ephesians chapter 5.
yeah, I read it.
Did it have anything to do with that?
No, it was something. It was something else completely. It was something else different, but I forgot what it was.
Yeah, maybe it'll come back after I run my mouth. I just want to say that's definitely some Tobe input that your Isha brought forth, just because of the way our minds work and how vulnerable we actually are one to another. Um, is one thing to be right. It's another thing to be right and then express, let that be shown in a manner that doesn't add contention, because then something else will work its way in and create a rift between the two parties. And then the next go around, who's going to want to hear, it makes you want to listen less when you feel like you're getting jabbed versus like the latter part of James 3 says, the wisdom from above being
First
peaceable,
peaceable.
gentle, easy to be received, versus, aha, I told you so. You know what I mean? Rather man, woman, or child, as we continue to grow, I pray that we lean more toward that gentleness that we want to receive, realizing yeah, I'm doing this for you, but I'm also doing it for myself, whether or not I'm paying attention to that, because I'm going to receive back what I put out.
Mhm.
It's powerful when we don't gloat, so to speak, because then there's room for someone to choose reproof
Mhm.
versus feeling like it's being forced upon them and that pressure making them want to go in the other direction.
Mhm.
There's definitely toe points because one to another, when we join ourselves together, we are taking responsibility to be willing to sacrifice ourselves so that the other one can reach the kingdom. Because of the perversion of the world, a lot of times that's not explained or even entertained before these unions are brought forth. So then we stumble and trip and fall until we figure that out like, oh, wait, no. My whole job is to sacrifice myself for her. She's here to sacrifice for me uh, on every level that we can gain education on. And we grow together and it becomes brighter and brighter until the perfect day.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
that's a really tough point that you brought out, in regards to not gloating or not, rubbing somebody's face in it. I told you you shouldn't did that and I said that, and, we don't want to do that, be it man, woman, or child, be it towards man, woman, or child. Um, and that's what I was speaking to, previously about, should anybody listen to this after the fact and so on and so forth. Prayerfully, there's some edifying rhetoric in here and edifying information in here that will help. Because I specifically remember when we began in this walk, there was doctrine that was going around. Don't matter what the message, how they bring the message out. Are you listening to the message? Don't matter what, I'm saying, somebody got a few cuss words in there or whatever. Are you hearing what they're saying? No, it does matter.
It makes it hard to hear.
It does, because it says
Mhm.
soft and way wrath.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it talks about bitter water and sweet water coming from the same fountain, and it should not be.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So, and just as you brought out, so absolutely the way that a message is brought forward affects whether or not it will be heard
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
can. You know what? I can't say it because none is drawn to the Father, let the Father draw them. It can contribute to how
Mhm.
well the lesson or the message is heard,
Mm-hmm.
because as the word says, the wrath of man is not going to work, the will of the Father.
No.
Mhm.
So bringing forth the wrath of mankind, because I told you, how, or whatever, you're not bringing forth the will of the Father.
It doesn't make a bed for the spirit of wisdom or the set apart ruach to lay down on.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mhm.
might put somebody in fight or flight mode, but it doesn't make them want to receive correction.
Exactly. So absolutely, the way that a message is delivered, it absolutely has a contributing factor, or a weight or a heavy part that it plays in how that message is received.
Yeah.
And we can't get, and this is, I'm appreciative of the Father for how he brings us, to certain things and how he deals with us. Because, like I said, I remember that being I specifically remember that being a doctrine when we first got into this walk, and that's still at times you hear that at times, and it's like, no. In many places, for servant of the Most High must be this, that, and the third. Talking about 2 Timothy, was it 2:24, and so on and so forth. For the one who pleases, the servant who pleases the Most High. Talking about in Isaiah, verse 3, will he not break? Or this, that, and the third. Like, there are a great many of places when it talks about your approach,
Yeah.
and how that's supposed to be done. And we say we agree with the Father and with His Word, and then this, that, and the third. And then when we turn around and listen to these doctrines that say, well, it don't matter who's saying it or how they saying it. If I'm saying it like this, that, and the third, are you listening to what I'm saying? No, I'm not listening to what you're saying, because you coming at me all sideways and wrong.
Yeah, that goes into getting to know the Father and Him allowing us to understand a little more about the warfare that we're involved in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the conflict between light and dark, realizing that you can't control somebody, you can't shove somebody into the kingdom with your efforts. The
Mm-hmm.
best we can do is to be persuasive without manipulation, encouraging somebody to choose right, encouraging somebody to go toward correction. And that's not going to be done by force. It's not
Mm-hmm.
going to be done with our flesh. It's not going to be done with forceful words. It's done in a manner that is peaceable, is gentle. Uh, the list goes on. There's a dividing line between those sides of the list: works of the flesh and works of the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
It's those works of the set apart spirit that will encourage somebody when they are wrong to choose correction. And
Mm-hmm.
in that, there's a chance to win a soul, which is why
Mm-hmm.
it takes the wise to win souls, because as the wise, sometimes you have to suppress your natural or carnal um, responses so that the light of the Father's ruach or spiritual response in its appropriate season can shine forth
Mm-hmm.
without your efforts being tainted by what the natural side brought forth. And now the person doesn't want to hear anything you have to say because this has happened or that was said. And now the enemy can bring that up as a barrier when you are saying the right thing at what would have been the appropriate time. Like it's not enough to have the right word, but the right word has to be placed in the right season.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like those apples in that fine dish. Uh, but the Father in His mercy is allowing us to grasp these things and to learn to try and cultivate these things so that we can become punctual and effective. To Him be the glory, because in our natural state we wouldn't choose these ways,
Ooh-wee.
but we're called to become more than natural.
Mm-hmm.
All praises to the King. It's definitely an excellent lesson. Again, not exhaustive, but Father willingness enough to encourage another
Mm-hmm.
to dig a little deeper,
Mm-hmm.
to listen and to speak at the appropriate times with the appropriate words.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, all praises. It did come back to my mind. What what
All praises.
yeah. So one thing is like understanding one with the other that a lot of times what we need in that moment we might not necessarily know how to communicate what that need is. We might not even know what the need is. We just know we need, right? So a lot of times, I like one thing I can say is this: imagine if you were the adversary, what would be your goal, right? The only time the adversary is ever going to promote unity between the Ish and the Isha or the children or whatever in the household, the only time that that's ever going to happen is if he will promote unity to be against the father. Now he will promote that unity. It was all in when we look at how it was in the garden. He was okay with Adam and Hawa being on one accord and doing the foolishness that they did to turn away from what the father had said. Yeah, he all about unity in that, but everything else, nah, the adversary is never going to be after a united front between the Ish and the Isha, right? Or between the children, or between, like, that's not expecting that to happen. That's not going to happen. So one thing is, one way that he will wiggle in is through the communication, right? Like it's such a big deal. Like we were just talking about how a message is conveyed, right? Like there are so many physical barriers that might prevent one from hearing or giving esteem to the father if they see that no, the esteem is going to you, right? So like if you did it for you to get esteem out of the thing, but still expecting a father to be praised in it, that don't even make sense, right? So like one part of it is nah, like it should be all praises to the father. The goal is that we just all happy that we all made it, right? Well, better late than never. I'm happy that it's seen now, right? Another part of it is like like I said, understanding that one to the other, we might not even necessarily what it is know what it is that we need in that particular moment. And so you got to have a level of one humility, and then like you were saying earlier, a level of compassion to understand, okay, this individual is in this state at this point in time, and it's some things that need to be figured out. Again, we talking about within the context and under an umbrella of righteousness. We're not talking about the foolishness and the unrighteousness. A fool is gonna be a fool, and that's just that. Leave that one alone. That's all I can really say. But under the circumstances of you dealing with two righteous individuals trying to figure it out and just going through the ups and downs that's common to all mankind, and trying to figure out self, trying to understand the father, trying to understand one another, trying to understand it, it's a lot that goes into it. Then with those ebbs and flows, you're just gonna see that there's gonna be times where it's you gonna go through something, learning experience or a trial or whatever it is, that is something that you got to get right. But having a level of compassion to understand that sometimes what we're dealing with on the surface with one another, each to the each side, is not always indicative of the situation, but sometimes it's something that's below the surface that that individual might not necessarily have even put a finger on. They just know there's hurt there, or there's trauma there, or there's whatever is there. There's, that has to be dealt with, but don't know how to deal with it. So there's a billboard, right? And I laugh when I see to myself when I see the billboard, because I said, well, it kind of is true. Of it, there's a child, and the child looks mad, right? And the billboard says, "You think I'm angry, but really I'm scared." So like when we translate that over into just sometimes in the relationships, a lot of times an emotional response can look one way, but really is something else. There's layers to it that's below the surface, is all I'm saying. And it takes patience and humility with one another to understand that part of it, to say, okay, well, sometimes, again, speaking in righteous environments, sometimes the ish is going through this silent, or whatever the case might be, and it's just really because he's trying to figure this out. He don't know what way to go, and he's just really genuinely trying to figure this out, right? Sometimes with the Ishai, that can be the case, just really trying to figure this thing out, right? And it's not a personal thing one to the other, but if I were the adversary, that's what I would want you to think, right? Same, likewise, we can generally say, just because of how one was designed over the other, sometimes the emotional response for women can be very different than it is for men, right? But that's not always a personal thing. Sometimes it literally is, okay, I'm going through whatever emotions because of said thing, but you might not necessarily have put a finger on, well, this is what it is that's going on, right? It's just something is triggered, and this is how I'm responding because of the situation, right? So it takes wisdom and dealing with wisdom with on both sides, one with the other, to understand, okay, let's try to get to the root of this. Is it really, and then once we understand that part of it, then it goes transcends into, okay, so how can I be of aid? How can I be of service? Right. And that's not just the woman to the man, but to the man to the woman, both sides, both ways. Okay, if this is what the feeling is, then, and this is what the root of that of said thing is, what can I do to help alleviate that, if there's anything that can be done? Or if it's just something that, no, this was there before you, and this individual is on their own journey with the father, where the father is bringing something to the surface and saying that has to be dealt with if you're going to get farther with me, right? Whatever that case is, sometimes it just takes the other to say, okay, how can I aid and assist in this situation, father willing, right? Which will require sometimes, in some cases, I got to go to the father on your behalf to figure out, okay, how can I help? right? Father, how would you have me help and deal with this situation if there is even anything that I can do? And if that's the case, then let reveal that thing to me so that whatever this is, we can get to the root of it together. Or y'all get what I'm saying. Sometimes it just requires that level of humility and that, but ultimately the goal at the end of the day is that all within the house, it's like they say, when the tide rises, all ships sail. Like that's the kind of mentality that, the aim is when we talking about what the Father is no man, it really literally is no man left behind. If, like y'all said earlier, this one is my daughter, this one is my son, and my goal is that none should perish. So how can we all be able to be of assistance to one another so that we can all make it? But yeah.
That's what I was going to say too. The communication part. Me personally, I get so much peace when after praying. You know what I mean? Like you were saying. First the Isha communicating. Okay, this is what's going on, and then say okay, and just being okay. The word being okay with them saying I just need I need some time. I'm not sure. I need some time. Oh, being okay with that, and then going to the Father and like you were saying, okay, Abiyahua, how can I be of assistance to my Ish or Isha? What could I do? And waiting for the answer, and another thing, not secretly being upset, not doing one of those
Passive aggression is the word.
passive
Yeah.
aggressive. You know, I mean, I guess you can eat. I mean, I guess I can. Yeah, here. You know what I mean? Like doing that, like you got to be, personally speaking, you got to be careful with that. So that's why I say just being okay with whatever the answer, the Isha gives you, and
Again,
and
preface it by saying under righteousness,
under
like
righteousness,
yeah, under righteousness,
under
assuming all of those boxes are checked.
yeah,
As foolishness is foolishness, and the Father ain't gonna stand by that regardless across the board. But
yeah,
under righteousness, yeah,
yeah.
all praises.
So just and then after that, allowing Abiyahua to just really work through, like you said, his son or daughter, and being at peace. Literally being at peace, being okay with it. Situation, even if y'all go through some totals, hit the bottom, whatever the case may be. This is the person that Abiyahua has given to you. So, all right, Abiyahua, through thick and thin, I think that's what they say. For better or for worse, that's what they say. We gonna be okay. And then eventually the other person will come around, and say, all right, this is what I've been feeling lately, and I don't know. And then it's still your job to okay, with compassion and mercy, let me listen to understand, not listen to speak. And hey, do you need me to say something right now, or can I just you want me to speak or be quiet? Just be a listening ear. Or yeah, let me give me your advice. What do you think? And then if so, all right, well, have you prayed to Abu Yahuwah? Have you talked to the Father about it? Just making sure that as a Isha that we're being that proper pillar of peace, or what is it, pillar of rest, as it says. Yeah, just being okay with those types of I don't know, directions. Being okay with the steps that it takes for the individual to be right with the Father, and just asking a question. Hey, you want me to speak or you want me to be quiet as an Isha? Sometimes the Ish don't want to hear, all that extra. Other times, like, Yahuwah is the head. I don't need that right now. I just need you to listen. I mean, I know I got to come up with a decision. Just listen, Or, I mean, tell me what you think, or sometimes Isha be like, oh, I'm going to tread lightly. I'm not sure either. I'm just going to be quiet and just wait and we going to see, and that's okay too. So, yeah, just steps. But yeah, communication is definitely key for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all praises. Yeah, I'm yield because yeah, I don't have anything else to say. All praises. All praises to the Father.
All praises. Definitely toe points, especially with the sometimes a lot of times we have a need and cannot express what it is because we don't know what that need is ourselves. Um, yeah, definitely significant positions to be in such close proximity one to another in these types of set apart unions, um, and getting to know one another through the Father's eyes and our experiences one with another so that we can bridge the gap to shalom, like you all were just saying, one for another. And then we'll naturally receive that in return. Yeah, it's beautiful. Realizing, one might be being more abrasive than usual, not because that's what they intend to do, but they might be in an unsure place and not realizing that it's coming off as them being abrasive or whatever the case might be. And
Mm-hmm.
then, as the other party, if we're able to see it, in order not to trigger the individual further, instead of trying to call it out, how can I bridge the gap so that they can get back to that sure place? At times, if I can, without even saying a word, so that it ain't me, but the Father gets the esteem and the glory because I'm not trying to, seem like I know what's going on, but just doing my best to bridge the gap so that shalom can flow and not be blocked off.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Knowing that the enemy is going to try to eradicate shalom. So how can I, as a child of the Most High, try and add shalom to the situation? Realizing
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of times the answer is not in my words.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all praises to the King.
Yeah, all praises. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if y'all have any announcements or anything like that, but yeah. With that being said, I'm Toby O. Definitely prayerfully another lesson just for us to reflect, meditate on. Like I said, it's not at all exhaustive or comprehensive, but hopefully some toe points were there for us to be able to, like I said, make it from glory to glory.
Yeah, all praises. All praises. Wonderful and a powerful lesson. Definitely appreciate it. All praises.
Absolutely. Oh, excuse me. Absolutely, definitely. Told lesson. A lot of I said it last week when we was listening, when we was doing the man, I'm excited about this one because yeah. Um with Ishah's got to have this stuff in mind as well. So it's unity of the household and oneness within the Most High, oneness within ourselves, and all of that. So absolutely, definitely told lesson, told things to meditate on, as I stated multiple times, and I'll say it again, Most High willingness was edifying and uplifting, or is edifying and uplifting to any who will hear it afterwards. After it's all said and done. I do not have any announcements at this time. All praise to the Most High. We definitely got enough um, content up. I just want to encourage people to go back and listen to the previous ones and so on and so forth. We're trying to do our best to um, learn and excuse me, learn the ways of y'all, learn the covenant, learn what we broke, restore the balance, restore what we broke, restore those things that are so foreign to us, and this is a walk, and it's a, like was stated previously, it was said earlier, it's a dance, complicated dance, but a beautiful one when it is performed well, so prayerfully these lessons and discussions and meditations and things like that are not in vain, and they are helpful because they not only come from a place, as says each lesson, Hebrew 4:4 is up there right now. Listen,
411.
Or 411, sorry. I said 411. It's going to hit both ways.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to hit both ways. So prayerfully, our experiences and our lessons and how Father is working with us individually is edifying and uplifting and admonishing to anyone else out there who will hear, who will pay attention to it and come across these after the fact. With that being said, like I said, no announcements. So we'll go ahead and get on out of here. May the Most High hear us or keep us. May the Most High hear us in our time of distress. May He make us exponentially more than we are as it is this day. All praise unto the Most High, and may that be for our tov and not for our destruction. Hallelujah. Righteousness has been a word repeatedly used throughout this particular discussion, and absolutely may our ultimate goal be righteousness, within the Father. And to that, I would say Shabbat Shalom, y'all.
Shalom.
Shalom.
Hallelujah. Shalom.